Chapter 401, Journey to the Blue Mountains. Crossing the Eastern Kingdoms to reach the Blue Mountains was an adventure John Quan decided to undertake with a sense of tourism in his heart. 2 days after departing from the capital, he found a suitable place to rest. He fed Polo, his horse, a turnip, Polo's favorite treat. As Polo contentedly chewed on the vegetable, John cleaned his sword, having just dispatched a flying bat. He found himself in a cave, a shortcut to the Blue Mountains, pondering the existence of a mysterious organization that documented even such hidden paths. Emerging from the cave, John noticed the chill in the air. Polo, sensing the change, stamped his hooves on the ice-crusted ground, the sound echoing through the forest. Before long, they stumbled upon a village, where the locals eyed John with suspicion. A middle-aged man approached, offering a cautious smile after a brief inspection. "Hello, what can I do for you?" he inquired. John, with a disarming smile, replied, "My horse and I have been on the road for over a day. We're looking for a place to rest and are willing to pay." The man's smile warmed, and he introduced himself as Sandy, the head of the village guard. He led John to a tavern, explaining that while they lacked a hotel, Old Dan, the tavern owner, would likely offer a room. Old Dan, a bald man with his clothes stained from frying fish, greeted them with enthusiasm. Sandy, however, discreetly advised against trying Old Dan's culinary specialty. As they settled in, Sandy shared a glass of hot wine with John, mentioning the increased activity of those guys after winter. John, curious, learned that Sandy was referring to elves, a revelation that intrigued him. Despite his extensive reading in the King's Capital's library, John had yet to encounter elves. Sandy, slightly inebriated, expressed a common human disdain for elves, attributing crop damage and thefts to them. This animosity, John realized, stemmed from the elves and humans' shared history, with much of human civilization built upon the remnants of elven societies. Reflecting on this, John mused about the shifting dynamics of power when faced with common adversaries, noting how internal conflicts among humans seemed less significant in the face of external threats like the elves. After Sandy had drunk himself into a stupor, Old Dan helped him home, leaving John to tend to Polo. Using mind magic, he reassured his horse, ensuring Polo was comfortable in this unfamiliar setting. John then retired to his room in the tavern, which soon closed for the night, enveloping the village in silence. The following day greeted them with gloomy weather, casting doubt on the suitability of continuing their journey. John stood by, his senses slightly dulled by the remnants of alcohol, as he watched Sandy change. In his hand, he held an oak shield, which, to John, seemed no more formidable than a kitchen pot lid. "Are you leaving?" Sandy asked, a note of surprise in his voice. "You may not be aware, but heavy snow is forecasted for the coming days." "I'm aware," John replied, leading Polo as he prepared to depart. Despite feeling a sense of regret at leaving Sandy behind, whom he had come to regard highly, John didn't feel right imposing his stay. As John walked away, Sandy couldn't help but express his admiration. Such a life is truly enviable. He harbored a bit of envy for the freedom to roam far and wide, a luxury he couldn't afford due to family obligations. Merely half a day after John's departure, the village's tranquility was shattered by the arrival of new visitors. The sound of horseshoes clattering against the frosty ground heralded the approach of a group of 17, each armed with a sword and bearing the mark of a wolf slayer on their saddles. Sandy, having visited large cities, recognized the insignia as belonging to a notorious organization known as the Hunting Group, a band of mercenaries masquerading as demon hunter adversaries. Their reputation for brutality preceded them, with tales of massacres in their wake. When Node, E-Group's leader, a man marked by a scar across his nose, inquired about a man matching the description in a portrait he held, Sandy, wary of provoking their ire, denied having seen anyone of the sort. The man described had brown hair and was armed, unlike the unarmed visitor Sandy had recently hosted. Despite the discrepancy, the scarred leader's suspicion lingered, prompting further questioning among the villagers, all of whom echoed Sandy's response. Relieved yet apprehensive, Sandy hoped the matter was settled until the leader declared their intention to rest in the village, a statement that sent a chill down Sandy's spine. With no choice but to comply, Sandy led them to the tavern, all the while signaling the other guards to arm themselves. The tavern soon filled with the raucous sounds of drinking and menacing laughter, a foreboding atmosphere that Sandy hoped wouldn't escalate into violence. However, the situation deteriorated rapidly when a drunken member of the group assaulted a village girl, igniting a chain of events that led to a night of horror. Flames engulfed the village as the hunting group unleashed a rampage of violence, assaulting women, murdering men, and setting buildings ablaze. Amidst the chaos, Sandy, in a desperate attempt to save his family, was fatally wounded. His last moments were marked by the sight of a terrified elf boy hiding in the shadows, clutching a sack of millet stolen in the confusion. The irony of the guards sworn to protect the elves falling to human hands was not lost on Sandy as he succumbed to his injuries, his final gesture inadvertently sending the elf boy fleeing into the safety of the dark forest. 3 days later, John, unaware of the tragedy that had befallen the village, continued his journey. The landscape around him had transformed, with the blue mountains rising majestically in the distance, their snow-capped peaks glinting in the sunlight. As John's hair gradually reverted from brown to its natural black, the runes on his sword began to glow, seemingly guiding him forward. Suddenly, an arrow whistled through the air towards John. With reflexes honed by countless encounters, John caught the arrow inches from his face. Turning to face his assailants, he found himself surrounded by figures with eyes filled with greed and malice. "Finally found you, black-haired wanderer," they sneered, closing in on John with malevolent intent. The leader of the group bore a distinctive scar across the bridge of his nose, giving the impression that his nose had been severed. "Kill him and claim the bounty," he commanded, prompting the hunters to quicken their pace towards John. John, with deliberate slowness, drew his saber. The runes etched into the blade flickered momentarily before ceasing. It was at this precise moment that a dark shadow streaked across the sky, casting a massive silhouette on the ground, plunging it into darkness. A roar, reminiscent of a lion's, echoed through the air, stirring up a flurry of huge snowflakes and causing the hunters' horses to rear in terror. Despite their initial ferocity, the hunters were thrown into disarray. The shadow descended, and in a single bite, it cleaved a man in half. The impact of its landing sent shockwaves through the group, inciting panic. "It's a flying lion," someone screamed, and the hunters, who had been so eager to kill the demon hunter, were now paralyzed with fear. This flying lion, with wings akin to an eagle's and a body larger than any forest-dwelling demon, was not satisfied after consuming one man. It devoured another, and as someone attempted to retaliate, they too were swiftly overpowered. The hunters, who had once massacred a village, were now the hunted, their roles reversed in the most ironic twist of fate. Amidst the chaos, the scarred leader turned to John, desperation in his voice. "Demon hunter, kill it quickly. Isn't it your duty to protect humans?" John offered him a smile, but made no move to act. The leader's plea grew more urgent. "Hurry up, you're a witcher." "Sorry," John replied with a non-chang, a lance that bordered on apathy. "Witchers don't protect animals." Before the scarred man could respond, the flying lion's blood-stained jaws closed around him. The remaining horses, overcome with fear, scattered in all directions. John stood witness to the flying lion's ruthless decimation of the hunting group. From a distance, a pair of eyes observed the scene intently. A man with white hair and a gaze that was both probing and thoughtful watched on, his interest piqued by the unfolding events. Chapter 402. I Killed the Flying Lion. The flying lion was a creature of sheer brutality. It thrived on bloodshed, having decimated the entire hunting party. The Blue Mountains were soaked in blood, and horses were devoured until only a few remained. It was only after this carnage that the beast seemed to remember there was another prey, John. Its massive body dwarfed that of a giant bear, and its wing feathers were as lethal as sharpened blades. A recent victim had been ensnared by its wings, instantly reduced to nothing more than a pile of flesh, as if they had been thrown into a meat grinder. Not even the toughest hide could withstand its might. An axe would leave no mark. Its speed was unmatched, its attacks devastating, and its defenses seemingly impenetrable. To John, it appeared to be an unbeatable monster. "This must be the flying lion Emily warned me about," John mused, recalling the animal remains he had encountered on his journey, victims of the flying lion's hunts. This creature exuded an oppressive aura unlike any other John had faced recently. Blood dripped from its teeth, which were stained with the remnants of its victims, and its fierce gaze locked onto John like a hunter eyeing its prey. "If Hagrid were here, he'd probably call you a cute little thing," John remarked, half-jokingly. He knew Hagrid's unique sense of what constituted cute would certainly extend to even a beast as fearsome as the flying lion. Gripping his sword in his right hand, John calmed his mount, Polo, with a touch of psychic magic, quelling the horse's panic at the scent of its fallen kin. "Don't be afraid. We are the hunters here," John whispered, his eyes narrowing into slits. He weighed his options aloud. "Should I sever your wings, or should I aim straight for your heart?" His words seemed to enrage the flying lion, which responded with a roar that sent a powerful gust of wind in their direction. John spurred Polo forward, ready to confront the beast. The distant mountains seemed to watch silently, bearing witness to the impending battle. As John closed in, the flying lion swiped at him with claws capable of slaughtering a horse with ease. A silver light flashed between the claws, accompanied by the grating sound of metal on metal. John felt as though he had collided with a wall of steel, sparks flying upon impact. The beast charged again, and John, releasing the reins, gripped his sword with both hands to parry the attack. He was sent flying, a first for him, realizing the immense power behind the flying lion's assault. Concerned for Polo's safety, John used an invisible wave of magic to send his horse to safety, then readied himself for another round. "Let's try this again," John said, undeterred. He knew that conventional tactics might be futile against such a formidable opponent, but he was not without other resources. "You might be tough, big guy, but you're not the toughest I've faced." With a grin, John watched as the flying lion took to the air, its blade-like feathers slicing through the wind. It hovered momentarily before diving towards John with lethal intent. The ground shook upon its descent, sparks flying as John's sword met the beast's claws in a shower of silver light. Each clash felt like a blow from a titanic force, but John adapted to the rhythm of their battle. He had faced many challenges at Hogwarts, including duels with fellow wizards, but never a monster like this. With a swift upward thrust, his sword grazed the beast's tooth, the cold steel reflecting in the flying lion's eyes. Sensing the imminent danger, the flying lion retreated, its survival instincts kicking in. A moment later, and John's blade would have pierced its eye and obliterated its brain. "Excellent judgment," John commended, the corners of his mouth turning up in anticipation of the next move in their deadly dance. John's approach to combat had evolved. He might not possess the enchanted meteor shoes, but his body, sculpted from years of rigorous training and enhanced by his magical lineage, was a formidable weapon in itself. The determined strides, he pursued the flying lion. As the creature attempted to take to the skies once more, John, with a swift gesture of his left hand, summoned an invisible force that clamped down on the lion's wing, pinning it a mere half-meter above the ground. Accelerating his pace, John's sword gleamed with a silver radiance as it sliced through the lion's fur, narrowly evading a retaliatory swipe from its paw. With agility, he flipped beneath the beast, seizing the mane on its underbelly to vault onto its back. Positioned strategically, he inverted his silver sword and plunged it deep into the lion's back. The creature roared in agony, but John was relentless. Stepping back, he gripped the sword with both hands and yanked it, extending the wound from a few inches to a meter in length. Driven to madness by pain, the flying lion launched into the sky, intent on crashing into the mountain to rid itself of its assailant. John, however, was not to be outmaneuvered. Drawing his wand, he aimed at the sword's hilt and cast a banishing spell. The opposing forces acted like repelling magnets, driving the sword deeper into the lion's flesh until the hilt vanished inside. With a sickening sound, the sword burst through the lion's body, transforming into a streak of silver light as it fell to the ground. The lion's wails echoed as it plummeted, but John, casting a cushioning charm upon himself, leaped from its back, landing with the softness of cotton despite the height. "This creature's resilience is remarkable," John remarked, inspecting the bearskin that now bore scratches. "But I've never been fond of lions." With a flick of his wand, he summoned the silver sword back into his grasp, and signaled to Polo, who had been observing from a distance. The horse approached obediently, and together they headed towards the fallen lion. John knew the beast's remains held valuable materials, its teeth, claws, and especially the wings, which could potentially be crafted into a new pair of meteor shoes, a project he had long contemplated but lacked the materials for. The flying lion had managed to cover some distance before succumbing to its injuries. Riding Polo, John traversed the sparse vegetation of the Blue Mountains, eventually finding the lion in a crater, seemingly the site of a meteorite impact. The creature lay dying, its breath shallow and labored. Sometimes an excess of vitality is a curse, John mused, noting the inevitability of its demise. The lion, too weak to fight, could only whimper at John's approach. Drawing his silver sword, John stood before the beast, his grip firm. "Let me ease your suffering," he said, before his sword, glowing with a silver luminescence, decapitated the lion in a swift motion. The wound, already drained of much blood, released but a trickle. John paused, the blood-red light from the kill absorbed by his sword, illuminating the fifth rune. He swung the sword, flinging the last of the lion's blood onto the rocks. Now was the time for contemplation, to decide which parts of the lion to harvest. His bag, though small, could hold a few select items. As he surveyed the lion's carcass, footsteps approached stealthily. Polo, ever vigilant, watched as a white-haired man crept up behind John. In a flash of silver, the stranger reached out, only to be stopped by John's swift reaction. Eyes narrowed, John spun around and delivered a powerful punch. John's left hand lashed out, but his opponent deftly sidestepped, seizing the moment to aim a kick at the man's knee to free his right hand. With a swift motion, John's sword arced through the air, only for the man to duck in avoidance. They maintained a cautious distance, sizing each other up. The man before John had silver-gray hair, his face etched with the marks of time, suggesting a life full of experiences. Despite his age, he possessed a robust physique that would be the envy of many younger men. His amber eyes radiated a mix of sternness and warmth. Clad in leather armor with a sword strapped to his back, a distinctive necklace adorned his chest, a wolf's head pendant. John observed the man, who returned the gaze. After a brief silence, the man spoke, his voice carrying a note of respect. "You're quite vigilant. The fact that you could take down a flying lion on your own speaks volumes about your skills. Where do you hail from, young man?" There was no malice in his demeanor. John, feeling the tension ease, lowered his sword and replied with a calm, "Redania." "That's quite a journey," the man remarked, eyeing John's sword. "Are you a witcher?" Without waiting for a response, he ventured a guess. "Black hair, a demon hunter's silver sword, yet no amulet. You must be the Black Witcher, Yadani." The man had accurately deduced John's identity based on his appearance and equipment. However, his posture and tone didn't convey hostility. Instead, after a moment of contemplation, he offered, "You carry an unusual aura, but perhaps this conversation would be better suited for a different setting, young man." Extending an invitation, he introduced himself. "My name is Vesemir, and I'm heading to a place to spend the winter. Would you care to join me?" John sheathed his silver sword and glanced at the impending snowstorm. With a nod, he accepted. "It seems I have no other choice." The exchange between John and Vesemir was marked by mutual respect and the promise of an alliance, forged in the brief moments of their encounter. As they prepared to journey together, the heavy snow began to fall, setting the stage for the next chapter of their adventure. Chapter 403, Entering the Castle. Vesemir's skill in dismembering materials was unparalleled, surpassing even that of the alchemist John. Together, they managed to efficiently pack a flying lion before the impending snowstorm. As they worked, Vesemir curiously inquired about the items John and the wizard had purchased, observing how John packed the lion's teeth and feathers into a small bag. The additional parts, such as the lion's head and paws, were carried by Polo. Despite this, the flying lion's massive body remained. It's truly enormous. Honestly, this flying lion was quite challenging to defeat, John admitted, allowing Vesemir to collect some of the creature's blood. Vesemir, leading the way, remarked on the absence of such creatures in the previous year. They followed the riverbed, crossed a ravine, and ascended a mountain path. From this vantage point, John could see the ruins of a castle nestled among the stone walls. The castle, a victim of war, was severely damaged. Only the defensive wall, supported by scaffolding, and the remnants of towers and gates stood against the backdrop of a sturdy, cylindrical main tower. "It seems the Witchers are facing tough times," John observed thoughtfully. Vesemir, with a hint of nostalgia, responded, "Not everyone is welcome here." John, understanding the implications, had already recognized Vesemir as a Witcher. His knowledge of Jovanovich's history and Vesemir's distinct appearance, including an unusual amulet and eye color, confirmed his suspicions. Eager to learn more about the Witchers, John followed the guidance of his silver sword, which seemed to lead him to this demon hunter. As they entered the castle, snow blanketing their ankles, John parked Polo in the stable and began unloading their supplies. Vesemir complimented the bear skin among John's belongings, though he noted the craftsmanship was lacking. John shrugged it off, mentioning the lack of welcome he received. Vesemir, as the living master of the Witchers, treated John with kindness and led him into the castle. They traversed the dark corridors and entered the hall through an oak door. The hall was deserted, as the Witchers had not yet returned for the winter. "Witch hunters usually return in winter. This place will offer us solitude," Vesemir explained, offering to show John to a room. John, placing the lion's head on a table, paused before a tree adorned with numerous badges. Vesemir explained, "These badges represent the last memories of those who have left us." John observed the badges, reflecting on the Witchers' unpopularity and the dangers they faced from both monsters and humans. Caught in the middle, their position was indeed precarious. "Have you ever considered changing?" John inquired. Vesemir, shaking his head, replied, "Witchers remain neutral, boy." "But what has neutrality brought you?" John asked, scanning the hall and noting the scars of war on the walls. Vesemir, recognizing John's reference to the destruction of Balvi's walls, acknowledged his awareness of John's actions. John, unapologetic, stated, "It was their choice. I won't protect those who stone me." Vesemir, impressed by John's clarity of thought, realized the young Witcher would require careful guidance. "Your swordsmanship is excellent, but it differs from the traditional fighting style of a demon hunter," he observed, stoking the fire in the stove and igniting it with a burst of heat. He had briefly fought alongside John and noticed his unique approach. Unlike the typical demon hunter, who relies on weapons, physique, and magic seals, John's style was distinctively his own. John, often underestimated by wizards, drew his wand, not resembling a Witcher in the slightest. "Actually, until recently, I didn't even know I was a Witcher," he confessed, placing his wand above a cauldron. The pot, initially empty, suddenly filled with clear water, leaving Vesemir, who had turned to gather some snow for boiling, in utter astonishment. "A clear spring is like water, a very common spell," John explained with a smile, then glanced towards the other side of the room. "I'll go pick a room," he announced, and Vesemir gestured for him to proceed as he wished. John surveyed the stone rooms, long neglected and on the brink of collapse. He finally chose one that seemed slightly more stable. Inside, 2 mice scurried under the bed, which he quickly scared away. With a tap of his wand, the dust whirled up and flew out the window. "Magic is indeed convenient, but over-reliance on it will dull your swordsmanship," Vesemir remarked, leaning against the doorframe. He eyed John's silver sword and offered a kind smile. "There's still time before the others return." "Then, please, enlighten me," John responded eagerly. Outside the castle, despite the falling snow, the 2 Witchers were unaffected thanks to their extraordinary constitutions. Vesemir unsheathed his sword, giving John his first glimpse of a demon hunter's combat style. His movements were deliberate, aimed solely at defeating his opponent. John, skilled in level 6 swordsmanship, found himself repeatedly forced back by Vesemir's relentless attacks. "Level 7 swordsmanship," John acknowledged, as his sword clashed with Vesemir's. After more than 20 exchanges, John found himself at a disadvantage, his throat barely escaping the reach of Vesemir's blade. Vesemir appeared relaxed, in stark contrast to John's struggle. "He's like Dumbledore, but with a sword," John admitted, disappointment in his voice. The last individuals to challenge him so were Dumbledore and Voldemort. With swordsmanship alone, John couldn't mount an effective counterattack against Vesemir. But John was not merely a swordsman. A wand slipped from his sleeve. "Protego," he cast, deflecting Vesemir's sword. A white light from John's wand struck a yellow shield conjured by Vesemir's raised left hand. Alder's seal, Vesemir countered. Disarm your opponent. The force of the spell sent John flying, and Vesemir's sword was flung from his grasp. After tumbling on the ground to dissipate the momentum, John rose, rubbing his shoulder as if struck by a bull. Vesemir, too, was momentarily taken aback by the sight of his disarmed weapon. John retrieved the sword from a snowdrift and offered it back to Vesemir. You are the most skilled swordsman I've ever encountered, he said, his tone free of disrespect. If I wished to learn, what would it cost? Vesemir sheathed his sword, shaking his head. There's no price. I can already tell you're not affiliated with any school. He explained that a school of demon hunters had once betrayed their kind, necessitating a test to determine if John was an undercover agent from that school. It was clear now that John was exceptional. Though he might be outmatched in swordsmanship, Vesemir acknowledged that in a surprise battle, without preparation, John's mastery of magic could tip the scales. His approach to combat emphasized readiness. The betrayal had plunged their castle into war, leaving few survivors. If we can nurture a talent like yours, it would be a wise investment, Vesemir concluded. I haven't formally welcomed you, Vesemir extended his hand to John. Welcome to Kaer Morhen, Yadani. In this winter I will train you to become a true witcher, he promised. John shook his hand, smiling. It's my honor, teacher Vesemir. Vesemir returned the smile, welcoming the newest black witcher to their ranks. Vesemir had officially become a member of Kaer Morhen Castle. As the snowfall intensified, demon hunters from various parts of the continent gradually made their way back to this ancient stronghold. This period was both cherished and bittersweet for Vesemir. His greatest hope was to see the courtyard filled with witchers he had personally trained, a testament to his years of dedication and hard work. However, reality often fell short of his expectations. The number of witchers returning was dwindling each year, a stark reminder of the perilous lives they led. A fleeting expression of loneliness crossed Vesemir's weathered face. Among the witchers, he was more than just a mentor. He was a father figure, offering guidance and wisdom accumulated over the decades. His heart ached for the days when the halls of Kaer Morhen buzzed with the energy of young apprentices, eager to learn the ways of the witcher. The last to arrive was a figure with striking milky white hair, carrying 2 swords strapped to his back. His return brought a complex mix of emotions to Vesemir. On one hand, it was a relief to see him safe, a living testament to the effectiveness of his training. On the other, it was a stark reminder of the solitude and sacrifice inherent in the life of a witcher. Each return was a victory against the odds, yet it also underscored the dwindling numbers of their brotherhood. As the snow continued to blanket the world outside, Kaer Morhen stood as a solitary beacon of resilience. Within its walls, the witchers shared tales of their exploits, finding solace in their shared experiences. Vesemir, watching over them, felt a profound sense of pride mixed with an undercurrent of sorrow. The world was changing, and the witchers with it. Yet, in this moment, they were together, a family, bound by fate and forged in battle. In the grand hall of Kaer Morhen, over 20 witchers gathered, their laughter and conversations filling the air with a sense of camaraderie. The flickering candles cast a warm glow over the room, transforming the otherwise desolate hall into a place that felt like home. Such a lively scene, John observed, watching a white-haired witcher, the last to arrive, embrace his fellow witchers in warm hugs. In this place, they were more than just comrades. They were family, united by their shared fate as beings despised by the world. It was only here, amongst each other, that they could show their true selves, beyond the rumors and fear that usually surrounded them. Leaning against the handrail on the second floor, John's thoughts drifted. I might actually miss the 6th grade, he mused, considering the possibility that time flowed differently here compared to his original world. He half-joked about being considered a missing person back home. Yadani, Vesemir called out, approaching John with a friendly pat on the shoulder. Come, let's introduce you to everyone. Since John's arrival at Kaer Morhen, Vesemir had taken him under his wing, treating him as one of his own. As they descended the stairs, the witcher's eyes followed Vesemir with respect. However, when their gaze shifted to John, Curiosity and doubt replaced their reverence. Vesemir, holding a silver cup, addressed the gathered witchers with a heartfelt sentiment. I wish you all safety and a return home alive. The witchers raised their glasses in unison, toasting to their survival through another winter and to their brotherhood. After the toast, Vesemir turned to introduce John, but was interrupted by a tall witcher who scrutinized John's black hair and sword. The Black Witcher, Yadani, he said, recognizing John. John responded with a light chuckle, It seems my reputation precedes me. The atmosphere shifted, the camaraderie momentarily replaced by tension as the witchers scrutinized John. You destroyed a city, the tall witcher, Lambert, accused with a fierce glare. Lambert, a dark-skinned witcher, cautioned, but Lambert persisted, his bitterness evident. Vesemir remained silent, curious to see how John would handle the situation. Calm down, Lambert, Geralt, the witcher with milky white hair, intervened. However, Lambert's anger was not easily quelled, and he continued to provoke John, accusing him of only intimidating ordinary people. John approached Lambert, his laughter hoarse. If you have a problem with me, let's settle it without hiding behind words, he suggested, his tone soft yet firm. Lambert, taken aback, didn't respond. Geralt attempted to mediate, but Lambert shrugged him off. KN, the dark-skinned witcher, remarked on Lambert's youthful impulsiveness, noting that he was one of the youngest among them. As John prepared to leave the hall, Vesemir stopped him with a warning not to kill Lambert. Don't worry, Vesemir, John assured him. I never kill without reason. The witchers, intrigued by the exchange, followed John and Lambert outside to a clearing where John had previously sparred with Vesemir. Lambert, eager to prove himself, challenged John to a duel. John drew his sword slowly, further irritating Lambert. The witchers watched intently as the two faced off. Geralt, standing beside Vesemir, expressed his trust in John, noting his youth and potential for good. Vesemir shared his own trust in John, recounting their first encounter in the Blue Mountains where John had battled a flying lion. Geralt furrowed his brow, a sense of unease settling over him. A flying lion? He mused, his voice tinged with disbelief. I haven't encountered such a creature in the Blue Mountains for ages. Vesemir nodded gravely, his voice deep and foreboding. It's a sign, White Wolf. The world is undergoing changes, and this child, he gestured towards John, is part of those changes. As they spoke, the battle commenced. In a breathtaking display, Lambert charged towards John, his sword cutting through the falling snowflakes with precision. N, choosing to forgo magic, met Lambert's challenge with his own blade. The clash of their swords sparked in the cold air, each strike illuminating the battlefield with flashes of silver light. Lambert's strength was evident, his powerful swings scattering snowflakes from his form with each movement. John, however, was not to be underestimated. After exchanging a series of blows, he quickly gauged Lambert's skill level, somewhere between a level 5 and 6 swordsman. Realizing that Lambert's hope of defeating him with swordsmanship alone was futile, John seized an opportunity. He deftly maneuvered his sword to catch Lambert's weapon, executed a swift 3-step maneuver, and delivered a powerful knee strike to Lambert's chest. Lambert stumbled backward, ultimately kneeling before John in defeat. With his sword poised at Lambert's neck, John's demeanor was that of a sovereign bestowing a title upon a vassal, his expression serene and resolute. Lambert, his pride wounded, conceded defeat in a strained voice. He could have continued the fight using his magical seal, but he knew it wouldn't be enough to breach a city wall, let alone defeat John. John, with a flick of his wrist, sent his silver sword spiraling into the air. He then turned to face the other witchers, his posture open and relaxed, challenging anyone else who sought to contest his victory on behalf of Balvi. The witchers exchanged glances, and it was Geralt who finally spoke, his voice laced with newfound respect. I now believe he could have slain the flying lion on his own. Vesemir added, You should see the beast's head. It's quite the sight. As the silver sword reached the apex of its flight and began its descent, Ki-En, with sharp eyes, cried out a warning. The sword, with its lethal speed and sharpness, threatened to impale John. Yet, with a slight lean and impeccable timing, John allowed the silver light to sheath itself perfectly behind him, much to the astonishment of those watching. Geralt, impressed by John's bravery and skill, acknowledged that strength commands respect. John was quickly accepted among, with Lambert being the first to extend his camaraderie. That winter, under Vesemir's tutelage, John's prowess in alchemy flourished astonishingly. Even Vesemir, a seasoned witcher, found himself taken aback by John's rapid advancement. John devoted countless hours in the laboratory, once a site for training witchers, now a place of learning and discovery. He pored over ancient texts and notes left by wizards, his fascination with runes and alchemy rekindled. Like a sponge, he absorbed every piece of knowledge, his skills in both swordsmanship and alchemy growing by leaps and bounds. Vesemir soon realized that he could no longer keep pace with John's development. "This kid is beyond reason," he would say, marveling at John's ability to improve with each passing day. John formed close bonds with Geralt and Escall, but it was his relationship with Geralt that stood out. Geralt, once considered the pinnacle among witchers, found in John not just a rival but a relentless sparring partner. Their training sessions were intense, with John's enthusiasm pushing them to their limits. As time passed, John's reputation evolved. No longer was he known merely as the Black Demon Hunter. He became something more, a figure of the night, a devil whose name whispered fear into the hearts of those who heard it. Despite the theatricality of his new title, the Night Devil resonated with a sense of awe and respect among those who knew of his deeds. In the realm of witchers, the castle was often shrouded in mystery, especially at night when ghostly figures seemed to roam its corridors. As winter gave way to spring, the witchers gradually departed on their quests, leaving the castle quieter than before. John, having absorbed nearly all of Vesemir's extensive knowledge, found himself at a crossroads. "I don't think I can teach you anything more," Vesemir said, placing his hands on John's shoulders with a sense of finality. "I can't demand anything of you, but so Witcher, I hope you'll continue to rid the world of monsters." With those parting words, Vesemir bestowed upon John a silver wolf's head badge, the symbol of a true witcher. As he fastened it around John's neck, a white light emanated from the badge, weaving its way into John's sword. The 6th rune on the blade ignited with a brilliant glow, while the 7th rune began to pulsate gently, signaling the start of a new challenge. John, understanding the significance of this moment, reached into his satchel and pulled out a ring. He tossed it to Vesemir, saying, "Consider this a token of my gratitude for everything." Vesemir caught the ring, examining it briefly before looking up just in time to see John mount his horse. Without another word, John spurred his horse forward, leaving the castle and his mentor behind. As he rode into the distance, the castle faded from view, but the lessons and memories of his time there would forever guide him on his path as a witcher. Chapter 405, Shattering the Cat's Bone. John's journey was guided by the gleam of his silver sword. After traversing the Blue Mountains, he emerged into the open, his path marked by encounters with various magical creatures. Among these was a creature resembling a praying mantis, notable for its high resistance to magic. The time spent in Kaer Morhen had been fruitful. The combat techniques and special potions of the witchers had significantly enhanced his skills. His proficiency in alchemy, in particular, had improved, blending the alchemical knowledge of the witchers with that of wizards, hinting at the potential to reach level 7 in his abilities once he departed from this world. The reforged meteorite boots granted him the power of flight, yet he found comfort in the familiarity of horseback riding. With the arrival of winter, his horse, Polo, had grown somewhat lethargic, seemingly enamored with Geralt's mare. "I might just make your dream a reality," John whispered, patting Polo gently on the head. He used mind magic to rejuvenate Polo, ensuring the horse's hooves were protected with new horseshoes for the gravel roads ahead. As they continued, a battalion of soldiers hurried past them. John's gaze darkened. War was imminent in the kingdom of Livia, where he currently found himself. Rumors had reached him of an attack on Cintra, a massacre that claimed the life of the Lioness of Cintra, the Queen. The sudden rise of a powerful nation in the south was unexpected. War, as he knew, was universally cruel, a truth that held in both his original world and this one. Witchers, adhering to their principle of neutrality, refrained from participating in conflicts. Although John was not a traditional witcher, he too maintained a stance of neutrality, often purchasing information on magical creatures from war-torn regions with his own funds. Despite insisting these transactions were purely business, his generosity left a lasting impression, enhancing his reputation as Yanni, the merciful black demon hunter. Watching the soldiers disappear into the distance, John reminisced about his time with Geralt. Geralt mentioned having an unexpected son in Sintra, he mused, drawing his silver sword. The seventh rune, a testament to his battles against magical creatures, was slightly darker than the first 6. With no particular destination in mind, perhaps it's worth investigating. Riding through the chaos, John encountered bandits exploiting the turmoil, swiftly becoming a legend known as the Black Witcher. His journey from Redania through the Blue Mountains attracted the attention of several, including a wizard named Stregobor. Having suffered at the hands of Furui, a mutated girl, Stregobor's injuries were severe. Yet wizards possess resilience beyond ordinary humans, and he managed to escape to Shained Island, where he recounted his ordeal to the Brotherhood of Sorcerers, casting himself as a victim. He accused John and Furui of attempting to decimate a city, painting them as monsters in the eyes of the Brotherhood. A dark-skinned wizard of high standing suggested preparing to eliminate the devil-like demon hunter, twisting the narrative to set the Brotherhood against John. Only he knew his true intentions. A demon hunter capable of wielding powerful magic warranted study more than condemnation. As discussions unfolded, the focus shifted to the looming threat of Nilfgaard, highlighting the complex web of politics and power plays within the world of magic and witchers. Stregobor spoke with a haughty tone, dismissing the concerns with a wave of his hand. "They are both butchers who have slaughtered a city," he said, referring to the factions at war. Niflgaard poses an even greater threat. They are amassing wizards and planning a brutal campaign. He continued, asserting confidently, "The Witcher will remain uninvolved. They always stay neutral." The wizards of the Brotherhood exchanged glances, their inherent arrogance preventing them from taking the threat of a kingdom seriously, bolstered by the support of the entire North, Kingdom behind them. This attitude, however, led a witch present to ponder deeply. John, unaware of the wizard's quarrel, was more concerned with the tangible effects of the war. The devastation wrought by this conflict, he mused, will be remembered by future generations, but words will scarcely capture its true impact. Leaving Livia, John had just delivered a dead deer to a merchant's family. The man of the house was away, leaving his wife and children to fend for themselves. The daughter, upon seeing John and the sword on his back as he dropped the deer, looked at him nervously. "Could you tell me about any monsters in the vicinity?" John inquired, observing the girl. She didn't resemble a typical peasant girl, with her high forehead, neatly shaped eyebrows, and wide, captivating eyes. Her hair was a striking shade of white. John also noticed her delicate hands, uncharacteristic of someone raised in such a rugged environment. Nonetheless, he was focused on his mission and planned to activate the 7th rune before heading to Sintra. In these troubled times, a dead deer was a valuable commodity. The arrival of John, however, startled Christide, the mistress of the house. War had made her wary of strangers, especially those bearing arms. Yet, upon understanding John's intentions, her anxiety eased somewhat. The presence of an armed individual still unnerved her, given her vulnerable position as a widow with children. "There are 3 strange cats feasting on corpses in a reed field beyond here," Christide informed him, her voice causing her daughter to shudder. John nodded. "If that's the case, then we have a deal." He looked at Christide, expressing his hope for a guide. Christide hesitated, uncomfortable with the idea of venturing out with an armed stranger. It was then that the girl, Ciri, volunteered, "I'll take you there." Christide addressed her adopted daughter with concern, but Ciri's determination was evident. "You must give us the deer first," she negotiated. "Of course," John agreed, impressed by the girl's maturity despite her young age. He extended his hand to Ciri. "I hope you don't mind sharing a horse with me." "Not at all," Ciri replied, accepting his hand and mounting the horse. Despite Christide's worries, Ciri reassured her, "Let's go." Taking the reins, Ciri led the way, demonstrating her familiarity with horseback riding. The horse, named Polo, remained calm even when a path collapsed nearby, surprising Ciri with its steadiness. "Polo," She repeated the name, trying to get a reaction from the horse, but to no avail. John explained, "He's deaf, so he can't hear you," his tone casual yet distant, making an effort to maintain a respectful space between them. Siri, slightly put off by John's demeanor, directed him, "Just past the front." John considered dismounting to walk, keen on respecting Siri's personal space, a gesture she noticed and found surprising. Despite her circumstances, Siri was aware of her appearance and the implications of her actions. After fleeing Sintra and being adopted by Christid, who treated her with kindness and equality, Siri was determined to contribute by leading John to the reed field in exchange for the deer, a gesture that spoke volumes of her character and the complex dynamics of their encounter. To repay the favor she owed, Siri did her best to suppress the slight dissatisfaction she felt towards John's current demeanor. "We've arrived," she announced, pulling the reins to halt their progress. John dismounted his horse and surveyed the surroundings. They were at the edge of a reed field. As the sun began its descent towards the horizon, long shadows stretched across the reeds, and the unsettling cries of crows filled the air. The place had an eerie atmosphere. Siri, trying to maintain her composure, dismounted as well, but couldn't resist the urge to stand close behind John. In a hushed tone, she informed him, "Those 3 peculiar cats were spotted wandering around here 3 days ago." John's attention was drawn to human bones hanging from a tree, showing signs of being gnawed on. "Stay behind me," he instructed Siri firmly, before drawing the sword from his back. Siri, standing behind John, felt a reassuring sense of safety emanating from his figure. They ventured into the reed field together. John tapped his sword against the ground, sending out an invisible wave. Before Siri could even process what was happening, John spun around, grabbed her shoulder, and pushed her down. A silver light flashed above Siri, accompanied by a chilling screech of meows that made one's blood run cold. A drop of blood landed on Siri's ear. Turning her head slightly, she caught a glimpse of a blood-soaked cat, the size of a leopard, impaled on John's sword and dangling lifelessly. The cat had silently followed them into the reeds, and if not for John's quick actions, Siri would have been its next victim. Chapter 406, Encounter with the White Wolf. "Grab my robe," John commanded in a low voice, extending his left hand to deflect the blood cat's assault. His eyes transformed, adopting vertical pupils, as 2 piercing, infantile shrieks cut through the night. Utilizing a supersensory spell, John traced the elusive blood cat, invisible and inaudible to the unaided eye. "Their fur can also block detection," he noted, his eyes narrowing. The creature, previously eager to attack, had inadvertently revealed its position by sweeping its tail through the reeds, allowing John to catch it. Siri, gripping the hem of John's garment, stayed close behind him. "It seems I've made some errors in judgment," John remarked lightly. "I should have let you go." "Don't underestimate me," Siri retorted. John removed his bearskin cloak and draped it over Siri. "This cloak offers some protection. It won't prevent all harm, but it will shield you from immediate death and protect you from fire." "Fire?" Siri echoed, puzzled. John surveyed the reeds briefly before deciding to force the creature out. He drew his wand and whispered, "Incendio." The ancient incantation startled Siri, imbuing her with an inexplicable sense of familiarity. She then understood John's comment about not being burned. Flames erupted from his wand, swiftly transforming the reeds into a blazing inferno. Given the reeds' flammability, the fire spread uncontrollably. Amidst the flames, another shrill cry emerged. John immediately pinpointed its source. With a raise of his hand, a shockwave obliterated any remaining cover, revealing a blood cat with dark crimson fur, its eyes glowing with a sinister purple hue. Siri watched as John vanished from sight, only for the blood cat's agonized scream to pierce the night. In a swift motion, John incapacitated the creature, severing its head with his sword. The second blood cat lay defeated. Joy flashed across Siri's face, but it was short-lived. She sensed imminent danger from behind. As death seemed to loom over her, she instinctively moved forward, a sharp pain eliciting a cry from her lips. A deep gash marred the bearskin cloak. Turning, she saw another blood cat, its body engulfed in flames, snarling in defiance. Just as it prepared to strike, a silver light flashed, and the creature fell, a silver sword pinning it to the ground. John approached, inspecting the cloak. The claw marks hadn't penetrated the bearskin, but the impact had damaged Ciri's clothing. "You're all right, though your clothes have suffered some damage," he reassured her, helping her to her feet. Ciri, feeling a pang of sadness, touched the torn fabric. These clothes, carried from Sintra, held more than material value. They were a connection to her past. "Reparo," John whispered, pointing his wand at the damaged clothing. Before Ciri's eyes, the fabric mended, a spell of restoration she had never seen among the court wizards. With her clothes repaired and a sense charm confirming their safety, John extended his hand towards Ciri, who hesitated, momentarily confused. "My cloak," he explained, signaling for its return. Ciri, suddenly finding John's presence irksome, reluctantly handed back the cloak. The protective warmth she had felt moments ago now vanished. After dealing with the blood cat, darkness had fully settled. John activated the 7th rune, illuminating their path. He couldn't let Ciri walk back alone, but instead of riding, he allowed her to mount the horse while he walked alongside. "What's your name?" Ciri asked, her curiosity piqued by this mysterious figure. "I'm on a sort of mission," John replied casually, leading the horse along the path. "My name is Yadani." Yadani? The name stirred a vague sense of familiarity in Ciri. Despite the darkness, she noticed John navigated with ease, unaffected by the lack of light. John and Ciri arrived at the home of Ciri's adoptive mother. As they approached, a haunting wolf howl pierced the silence, causing John to halt in his tracks. Under the moon's glow, a white wolf shimmered with a silver radiance, its gaze fixed upon them from afar. "What's that?" Ciri asked, her eyes wide with wonder. "It seems like some kind of sign," John mused, sensing an inexplicable pull, a hint that his time here might be drawing to a close. Ciri, puzzled by John's cryptic remark, watched as the white wolf vanished into the night. Upon their return to Ciri's adoptive home, Christy, her adoptive mother, was visibly relieved to see Ciri safe. In gratitude for John's contribution of venison to their household, Christine warmly invited him to stay the night. Her kindness was evident, a trait that had led her to adopt Ciri as her own. John was about to decline the offer when he noticed Poirot, his horse, fixated on something. Following Poirot's gaze, he spotted freshly harvested carrots in the stable. "I'll buy those carrots," John declared, placing a gold coin on the table before Christine could protest. Poirot eagerly crunched on the carrots as Christide's son, initially wary of John and his sword, grew fascinated by the tales of John's bravery against 3 peculiar beasts. Despite his initial curiosity about John's sword, the boy heeded John's advice not to touch it. That evening, Christide prepared a meal of venison paired with red wine, a feast that delighted everyone, especially Ciri, who hadn't enjoyed such a meal in days. John, after washing up, returned with a youthful visage that surprised the family, reminding them of his true age. "How old are you?" Ciri asked, unable to contain her curiosity. 15, John replied casually, taking a bite of his venison. The revelation surprised Christie, who glanced at her son, realizing he was about the same age. John's maturity belied his years, making it easy to forget his youth. As they dined, John insisted on paying for the meal, a gesture that puzzled Ciri. His constant talk of transactions seemed unusual to her. Christide's son, intrigued by John's wealth, offered to wash Poirot. John, amused, agreed, promising payment if satisfied with the job. The son's diligent work in cleaning Poirot reflected his father's business acumen, a trait that pleased John. The family's initial reservations about Ciri, the adopted daughter, began to fade, especially for Christide's son, who had been concerned about the additional strain on their resources. After dinner, John, adhering to his habit, placed a gold coin on the table, a gesture that Christide gently refused. The venison was John's contribution, after all, and she had merely transformed it into a meal. As the evening progressed, a fiery orb streaked across the sky towards a distant fortress, capturing the family's attention. "It's Nilfgaard," Christine whispered, recognizing the fireball as a harbinger of war. John, observing the ominous sign, felt his silver sword stir, its runes glowing faintly. "War?" he pondered, sensing the impending conflict. Ciri, witnessing John's reaction, realized that the tranquility of their evening was about to be shattered by the looming shadow of war. In the dimly lit room, Christine watched John with a mixture of curiosity and concern. "Are you leaving?" she asked, her voice laced with a mysterious undertone. John paused, momentarily caught off guard by the question, but then he nodded. Deep down, he had a premonition that the ongoing war signaled the right time for his departure. With a sense of finality, John returned the silver sword to its sheath and retrieved a small pouch from his bag. He placed it on the table, revealing it to be filled with a substantial amount of gold coins. John reasoned that if his assumptions were correct, he wouldn't be able to take these with him when he left. It seemed more meaningful to leave the treasure for this family rather than let it vanish into obscurity. Chris Tide's eyes widened in surprise at the sight of the gold coins, clearly taken aback by the generous gesture. "Consider it a twist of fate," John said with a snap of his fingers. At that moment, Polo, the horse from the stable, came running out, breaking free from the grasp of Ladu, Christide's son. Owen raised his hand, and with a touch, Polo's damp coat dried instantly. He then mounted the horse with ease. As he prepared to leave, John's gaze fell upon Ciri. There was something about the girl that struck him as extraordinary. From his purse, he retrieved a ring and tossed it to her with a smile. "Use this to protect yourself and your family," he advised warmly. Without waiting for a response, John turned his horse around and rode off into the distance. Ciri, acting on impulse, caught the ring and ran after him, calling out, "Yadani!" But it was too late. John had already disappeared from view, leaving Ciri standing there, her shout echoing in the empty space, a mix of disappointment and determination in her heart. Chapter 407. Joining the Battle. As John departed, the sight of the white wolf caught his eye once more, signaling that his forthcoming trials would unfold on the battlefield. Polo, his steed, pawed at the ground, visibly unsettled. Animals possess a keen sense for danger, surpassing that of humans, and even Polo sensed the impending brutality of the war. To calm his nerves, John employed psychic magic, soothing Polo's anxiety. Another fireball streaked across the sky, drawing John's attention. He followed its trajectory until he observed the fireball being repelled by a magical force and plummeting into a pass. It was clear to John that a wizard was responsible for this, as the magical fluctuations were evident to his trained eyes. A battle dominated by wizards, he mused, spurring Polo towards the solitary city ahead. The city, usually tranquil, was now a cauldron of noise and panic, catching John off guard. No army? He wondered aloud, surprised by the absence of a military presence. The city's defenders were at best militia, barely trained and ill-equipped to face an army, let alone the formidable Black Army of Nilfgaard, which boasted tens of thousands of soldiers. The city's walls, low and ancient, seemed hardly capable of withstanding a siege. Upon entering the city, John was immediately noticed by a sorrel-haired witch. "Who are you?" she demanded, her stance wary. "I'm not from Nilfgaard. I'm here to assess the situation," John replied, trying to appear non-threatening. "A spy?" she accused. "No, I'm merely a traveler," John insisted, waving his hands in a gesture of peace. Despite his assurances, the witch, introduced as Triss, remained skeptical. Their conversation was abruptly interrupted by an incoming fireball, its immense magical power altering Triss's expression. A black-haired witch intervened, deflecting the fireball with a powerful gesture. Debris from the explosion hurtled towards them, but before Triss could react, John, wielding his wand, deflected the stones. "Are you a wizard?" Triss asked, momentarily taken aback before her expression turned to one of hope. "Are you here to help us?" John hesitated, his purpose in this place tied to a trial rather than a deliberate choice to join the battle. However, the fleeting glimpse of the white wolf on the city wall seemed to affirm his role. "You could say that," he responded ambiguously. Triss's spirits lifted at his response. "My name is Triss. Welcome to the defense effort," she said, introducing herself. "John," he replied, opting not to reveal his witcher identity to maintain neutrality. Despite never having met John within the sorcerer's circles, Triss was visibly relieved by his assistance. Her trust in him, despite the potential risk of him being a Nilfgaardian spy, spoke to her inexperience. Inside the city walls, the inhabitants were in a state of panic. Some fled, while others scrambled to prepare for the siege. Observing their lack of proper armor, John surmised they were villagers, unprepared for the swift advance of the Nilfgaardian forces. John's concern grew as he noticed the absence of the white wolf, which had vanished as mysteriously as it had appeared. This puzzled him. especially since the local wizards seemed oblivious to its presence. Among the defenders, the majority were witches, with only a handful of wizards. In total, there were 22 magic practitioners ready to stand against the approaching threat. As dawn broke, the tension from the night's attack lingered in the air. Many villagers had fled, but those who remained were hastily conscripted to prepare for the impending battle against Nilfgaard. Among them was John, whose presence elicited a curious glance from Vigforts, the leader of the wizards. Vigforts, a man whose youthful appearance belied his true age, stood tall and exuded an aura of righteousness and awe. Despite his looks suggesting he was in his 30s, he was in fact much older. "We can't wait for reinforcements from the northern kingdoms," declared Vigforts. "Not just a wizard, but also a seasoned Amander. We must take a stand now." The rapid advance of Nilfgaard's forces meant that help from the northern kingdoms would not arrive in time. Triss, counting the heads of those who had chosen to stay and fight, remarked with a hint of despair, "But we only have 23 people." Her eyes briefly met John's, including him in her count. The odds were heavily stacked against them, yet a determined wizard voiced his resolve to stay, saying, "I've lived long enough. I won't abandon this fight." Suddenly a thick fog, conjured by magic, began to roll in from the forest, masking the movements of the Nilfgaardian forces. Recognizing the strategic use of the fog, Vigforts quickly took charge, directing his forces with urgency. "They're approaching. We need to act now," he commanded, sending 10 wizards out of the city and instructing a green-robed witch named Sabina to lead the villagers to safety within the fort. Meanwhile, John was assigned to a defensive position on the wall, a clear sign that he was not fully trusted yet. From his vantage point, John observed the preparations below. Villagers armed themselves with bows and arrows, while a black-haired witch, identified by Triss as Yennefer from Vengerberg, coordinated the defense. Triss, noticing John's interest in Yennefer, teased him about her beauty and encouraged him to pursue her after the battle. John, however, dismissed the idea, stating simply, "I'm 15 years old," which left Triss amused and slightly confused. As the battle commenced, Triss joined the fray, channeling her magic through her hands and whispering ancient incantations. John watched in awe as she used a growth curse to unleash spores in the forest, incapacitating many soldiers with their toxins. It was then that John heard Yennefer's voice in his head, alerting him to the presence of soldiers directly ahead. He observed a witch named Coral use spiritual magic to incapacitate a phalanx of soldiers, a feat that took a toll on her physically, evidenced by her nosebleed. John realized that the magic being used in this battle was similar to his own, and that the rules of this world had been adapted from his original world, making this a genuine battlefield. As the villagers resorted to throwing explosives, and Yennefer skillfully directed the defense, John's perception shifted, allowing him to see the chaotic particles that reminded him of the blood-borne curse spreading across the battlefield. It became clear that both sides wielded powerful magic, with wizards present not only among the defenders, but also within the ranks of the Nilfgaardian army. The battle was not just a clash of armies, but a confrontation of magical forces, with the fate of the village hanging in the balance. John sensed the tumultuous swirl of chaotic particles converging in the city, and, with a swift motion, drew his wand. He aimed at the epicenter of the gathering energies. Reducto! A beam of white light surged through the deserted streets, striking the newly formed vortex. The light, however, failed to penetrate the vortex. It merely collided with its surface. Viggo, a formidable wizard within the Nilfgaardian army and one of its battle commanders, was orchestrating her forces with precision. She summoned her soldiers and, with a wave of her hand, conjured a portal. The soldiers, in perfect unison, drew their bows and nocked their arrows, aiming at the heart of the vortex. Just as they were about to unleash their volley, Viggo's expression shifted dramatically. From the vortex, a burst of white light erupted, expanding rapidly like a blinding flash. The blast sent a powerful gust that bent the surrounding trees and hurled the soldiers through the air. Viggo, caught in the maelstrom, was thrown against a tree and slumped to the ground, her eyes wide with shock. "Who is it?" she gasped, struggling to comprehend the source of the unexpected assault. Meanwhile, John's decisive action had not gone unnoticed by Yennefer, who found herself pondering Vigfortz's cautionary words. Don't trust that person too much. The battlefield's grim reality was setting in, and with a steely gaze, she recognized the gravity of their situation. Suddenly, a voice echoed in John's mind, clear and resonant. John. The narrative took an ominous turn as the voice continued, foretelling the end of an era. The story of the Witcher will conclude tomorrow, Sahua. This cryptic message left an air of uncertainty and anticipation. The battle's outcome and the fates of those entangled in this conflict hung in the balance, awaiting the dawn of a decisive day. Chapter 408, Breaking the Trial. The fog, thick and almost tangible, enveloped the city, held at bay only by the city's magical defenses. The gate had been breached, and it was only a matter of time before the fearsome Black Army poured through. 10 wizards had been dispatched to confront them, but they were quickly overwhelmed, their magical powers proving insufficient against the relentless assault. From his vantage point atop the city wall, John watched a witch being pursued by the army. He noticed a steady stream of chaotic particles flowing towards the broken gate. Although his duty was to protect the city wall, and technically the gate was not his responsibility, he couldn't ignore the call to action. John, I need you at the city gate. Yennefer's voice reached him, a note of trust in her tone, despite their brief acquaintance. Understanding the gravity of the situation, John didn't hesitate. He leaped from the city wall in what appeared to be a suicidal dive, drawing the attention of the Black Army below. They charged towards him, but with a mere swing of his left hand, he sent them flying with a powerful shockwave. As he approached the city gate, any soldier daring to confront him was similarly dispatched. The mist grew denser, and within it a figure emerged, a man emitting chaotic particles, his haggard face barely clinging to his skeletal frame, draped in white robes. John drew his sword, opting not to use his wand. The runes on his silver sword glimmered as he faced the man, a wizard from Nilfgaard. The wizard spread his arms, sending a surge of mist towards John. Speaking to his sword, John asked, "Is it you?" The sword responded with a slight tremble, as if alive. A knowing smile crossed John's face as a ray of flame erupted from the blade, revealing the power of a fire dragon within. As the 7th rune illuminated, the sword's true form was unveiled. John's voice, deep and ancient, whispered, "I am a fire dragon." The flame engulfed the sword, breaking through the mist and transforming into a dragon that plunged into the wizard's body. With a look of utter unwillingness, the wizard reached out towards John, his skull-like face twisted in regret. "The white flame will purify the world," he roared, his final words filled with despair. Flames burst forth from his body, consuming him completely until a rectangular box with a toothed seal dropped to the ground. Standing beneath the city gate, John watched as a blood-red light infused the sword, illuminating the 8th rune. The flames subsided, revealing the sword's delicate and unique design, the Sword of Silver Wick. John touched the vacant gem on the hilt, feeling a surge of emotion. A white wolf appeared in the mist, its ice-blue eyes fixed on John, fangs bared in a silent challenge. Sword in hand, John's eyes turned a steely gray. "It seems you are also part of the trial," he murmured, stepping towards the wolf. "Tell me, who are you?" The silver wick's tip grazed the ground, leaving a trail of golden flame that sliced through the mist. Yennefer, monitoring the battlefield, noticed John's departure. "John, come back," she urged, but received no response. After several attempts, she turned to Triss. "Guard the city gate," she instructed. Triss rushed to the gate, witnessing the eternal flames that John had left behind. "John, come back," she called, but like Yennefer, she received no reply. In the quiet of the night, John approached the white wolf, yet the world around him was eerily silent. As dawn broke, Ciri emerged from her dwelling into a fog-enshrouded landscape. Through the mist, she caught sight of a white wolf, similar yet distinctly different from the one she had seen the day before. She stood frozen, whispering in awe and confusion, "What is that?" Ciri was not the first to notice the white wolf, but she was among the few who could truly see it. She sensed an extraordinary aura emanating from the creature. It was neither beast nor monster, but something far more ominous, like a harbinger of disaster. Its body, covered in hoarfrost, seemed capable of engulfing the world in ice. A wave of terror washed over Ciri, her breaths becoming shallow, her vision blurring as if a blizzard had suddenly enveloped her. Just as she felt herself on the verge of being overwhelmed, a small, golden flame appeared, burning eternally on the ground. It melted the snow that clouded her vision, allowing her to breathe once more. Chaos swirled within her mind, the ancient blood coursing through her veins, prompting her to utter mysterious incantations. Meanwhile, John witnessed a winter landscape, where endless white dust blanketed the continent, freezing it in time. Memories of the artifact he had brought into this world, the Gate of Things, surged within him, accompanied by a chilling prophecy. The era of the cold wolf and snow is upon us, heralding a time of hoarfrost and white light, an age of madness and contempt, the age of the end. The world will perish in frost, only to be reborn under a new sun, marking the rebirth of a seed sown by ancient blood. This new species will not sprout, but will ignite a flame. This is inevitable. The voice, hauntingly familiar, seemed to echo from the past. John's eyes clouded over, yet his mind remained lucid, enveloped in a sensation unlike any prophetic state he had experienced before. He felt as though he had stepped into an age of chaos, surrounded by chaos particles that swirled around him without penetrating his being. Facing the white wolf, John declared solemnly, "The era of the cold wolf and snow." Golden flames danced along his sword, a manifestation of his resolve. "That's why it's becoming more and more real," he murmured, acknowledging his unique connection to this world as a demon hunter. "The accidental child of this world," he mused, recognizing his fate. John understood the gravity of his situation. The world, like Stregobor and Fry before, demanded a choice from him. Failure to complete the trial would trap him in this world, cutting him off from his previous life and everyone he held dear. To kill the white wolf would mean becoming the harbinger of disaster, a sacrifice rather than a victor. So, the so-called trial should have ended long ago, John concluded, surveying the battlefield where life hung by a thread. But surrender was not in his nature. Tearing off his Witcher amulet, he revealed a magic circle in his palm. Plunging the sword of silver Wick into the ground, he transformed the amulet into a pool of silver light, which he then merged with his sword. As John pressed the 9th rune on the blade, the intense heat seared his palm, a testament to the power being unleashed. Even with the resilience of a fire dragon's skin, the heat was nearly unbearable. The silver amulet slowly fused with the blade, marking the culmination of John's defiance and the beginning of a new chapter in his extraordinary journey. The 9th rune's position was claimed by silver. John spoke with a tone of indifference. "Don't attempt to control me. The essence of Slytherin cannot be altered by others. Yet the world itself will shift for me." The white wolf began to fade away, taking with it the amulet of the demon hunter. John etched a circle into his left hand, signifying the end of Yanni, the demon hunter, and marking his rebirth in this realm. Now, he was John Wick, a wizard of Hogwarts, unchained by conventional rules. John slowly sheathed the Silverwick sword, letting out a deep sigh. The final trial? Having forcefully surpassed the 9th trial, only one remained before John could return to his own world. He glanced back to see Triss conjuring vines to seal the city gates. A contingent of Nilfgaardian soldiers, in pursuit of the witch, drew near. "Coral, hurry back. Don't linger." Yennefer's voice rang out. John's gaze shifted towards the witch in peril. Upon seeing John return to his normal state, Yennefer reached out telepathically. "John, you must save her," she implored. Coral halted in her tracks, witnessing her fellow witch in distress. Despite Yennefer's voice nearly breaking in her head, she was determined. "Oh, rescue her." As Coral raised her hands to cast a spell, a black-armored soldier swung his sword, breaking her arm and interrupting her casting. Yennefer closed her eyes in anguish, unable to save her comrade. Just as the soldiers were about to deliver a fatal blow to Coral, the one leading the assault was horrified to find his sword disintegrating into dust. It wasn't just his weapon. The arms of the Nilfgaardian soldiers nearing the city gate turned brittle. A wave of white light emanated in ripples. John, having renounced his Witcher identity, was no longer bound by its rules. He raised his wand, his gaze sweeping over the scene, the soldiers before him mere pawns in his quest for freedom. With a calm demeanor, he walked out of the city, his voice resonating like a poetic chant. "Black soldiers, mark this moment well. You face the army's bane, the Lord of the Stars, creator of Johnny the Silver Hand, the King of Green Glass, the new sovereign of the wizarding world, the one who endured eternal frost, the wielder of the golden flame, the second to refine the Philosopher's Stone, the one who dared touch the door of the beyond, Jovanovich's Yardani. Black soldiers, remember this name, the man who shattered the Black Army, John Wick. His proclamation echoed across the battlefield, and as his final word dissipated, dark clouds amassed in the sky. John ascended, reaching the airspace above the city. With a flick of his wand, white lightning surged into the heavens. The thunder morphed into a colossal white sword, plunging into Nilfgaard's heartland. The earth itself was cleaved, and darkness was vanquished by its might. Black lightning flickered in John's eyes as his body voraciously absorbed the surrounding mana. The once formidable Nilfgaardian army halted, their eyes fixed on the black-haired man hovering above. Chapter 409, I Become a Flame. After being engulfed by a blinding white light, Wei Gei quickly regained her senses. She realized that the wizard she had dispatched to infiltrate the enemy lines had failed to penetrate their defenses. From the depths of the forest, the battle cry of the Nilfgaardian soldiers rose, "For the White Flame." This chant echoed among the ranks, uniting the soldiers under a single cause. Despite the assistance of numerous wizards, facing the overwhelming numbers of the Nilfgaardian army seemed an insurmountable task. The White Flame, revered as the King of Nilfgaard, had built his legacy on the graves of his enemies, his throne set upon tombstones, earning him the moniker, the White Flame dancing on the grave. This fervent belief in the White Flame had transformed a once modest southern realm into the formidable empire of Nilfgaard, bolstering the morale of its soldiers to unprecedented heights. In response, Wei Gei decided it was time to unleash her secret weapon. With a whispered incantation, "Open the Burial," a sealed box, hidden at the site where a wizard had been decapitated by John, was unlocked. Inside, metallic worms began to wriggle free, making their way toward the city gates. As Triss harbored concerns for John's safety, these creatures, known as Xiao Chong, infiltrated the city, burrowing into the ears of unsuspecting humans to bend them to Wei Gei's will. These controlled individuals were then compelled to gather explosives, setting the stage for a catastrophic sabotage. Yennefer, caught off guard by the appearance of Sabina, was about to question her when an arrow pierced her abdomen. The sight of a worm wriggling in Sabina's ear left her in disbelief. Moments later, the explosives were detonated, sending a massive shockwave through the city and hurling both Yennefer and Sabina into the air. The explosion wreaked havoc, effectively shattering Yennefer's strategy and causing significant casualties among the wizards. Amidst the ensuing white mist, a disoriented Yennefer desperately called out, seeking answers. As she stumbled out of the city gates, Triss, miraculously unscathed by the explosion, found her. "Yennefer," Triss called out, offering her support as they made their way out of the devastated city. The witch Coral and the wizard Atlan, who had been rescued from the outskirts, also regrouped. Disarmed and disoriented, the soldiers fell victim to their counterattack. As the sky darkened, signaling the end of the prolonged battle, Yennefer and the survivors looked up to see a figure hovering above them. "John," they whispered, recognizing the source of the white light that had momentarily halted the Nilfgaardian advance. John descended slowly, locking eyes with those gathered below. "Who the hell are you?" Yennefer demanded, her gaze piercing. With a chuckle, John replied, "I've told you, I'm John Wick." This name, unfamiliar to the lands of the continent, left Yennefer questioning the true intentions of this enigmatic figure. His sudden appearance in Soden, wielding such formidable power, was a mystery she was determined to unravel. As night fell and the forest beyond was illuminated by the torches of the Nilfgaardian soldiers, Yennefer knew time was running out. With only a handful of wizards still capable of fighting, she turned to John. "I need your strength, John," she implored, not as a command, but as a plea for assistance. The attention of those around them shifted to John as the Nilfgaardian forces advanced. After a moment of contemplation, John met Yennefer's determined gaze and inquired, "Are you proposing a deal?" "In that case, what are you willing to offer?" he asked softly. Yennefer's response was a silent affirmation, her resolve unwavering. "Very well," John said. his voice light yet carrying a weight of significance. "I hope you don't come to regret this decision." Agreeing to Yennefer's terms, John made it clear that whatever he demanded in return, she would have to comply. As they shook hands, intricate patterns of lines and circles briefly illuminated their skin. Yennefer felt a fleeting sting on the back of her hand, but upon releasing John's hand, her skin appeared unblemished. The Nilfgaardian army, bearing the emblem of the white flame, was rapidly closing in. Triss, with a sense of urgency, declared, "We need to hold our ground until reinforcements arrive." In the Northern Kingdom, she turned to John with a question in her eyes. "May I proceed?" John, without uttering a word, stepped out and advanced towards the Nilfgaardian army. "Have you ever witnessed the Golden Flame?" he inquired, his voice cutting through the tense air. Triss momentarily froze, her mind racing to the legend of the unquenchable flame. "What are you planning?" Yennefer's voice, laced with concern, echoed loudly. John halted, a mischievous grin spreading across his face. "I'm going to become the flame," he declared. Grasping the hilt of his silver Wick sword, the 9 runes etched into its blade began to glow ominously. From the sword's tip, a golden flame sparked to life, swiftly engulfing the blade and then his arms. His entire body was soon ablaze, a sight that sent a wave of fear through the gathered wizards. "Is he dead?" Coral asked, her voice trembling with nervousness. Within the heart of the flames, a deep, resonant sound emerged. "Those in need of aid, call out my name." The flames surged higher, transforming into a colossal vortex of fire. Within this inferno, John's true name was revealed, shining brightly. Golden scales pierced through his skin as majestic wings unfurled from his back. Whispering his real name, Wotan, John's form shifted into that of a golden dragon. This magnificent creature, born from the flames, stretched its 70-foot length under the starlit sky. With a powerful beat of its wings, the golden flames intensified, swirling around its massive form. The golden dragon soared into the air, its inextinguishable flames consuming everything in its path. The mist was vaporized, and the dark forest was overtaken by a golden radiance. Speaking in the ancient dragon tongue, it summoned the eternal fire, unleashing it from its golden maw. The Nilfgaardian soldiers stood no chance. Their white flames of defense were utterly overwhelmed by the eternal gold. In the midst of the Nilfgaardian ranks, a wizard, cornered and on the brink of death, watched as a black-armored soldier raised his sword. But just before the fatal blow could land, golden flames illuminated the forest, a fiery orb striking the soldiers and spreading like a wildfire, consuming them all. Miraculously, the wizard remained unharmed, looking up in disbelief at the golden dragon, whose wings fanned the unquenchable flames. To him, it was a beacon of hope and salvation. To the enemy, it spelled utter ruin and despair. Wege, the royal wizard, stood in awe of the towering dragon, its beauty juxtaposed with the merciless destruction it wrought. Being so close to the starry heavens, John, in his dragon form, drew upon an endless reservoir of magical power. His fiery wings laid waste to tens of thousands of soldiers, a catastrophe heralding the golden flame's indelible mark upon the world. As the dragon passed, a trail of bloody light followed, absorbed by the sword, signaling the completion of the 10th rune. When a fireball was hurled at John, he effortlessly deflected it with his claws, the fireball exploding and consumed by the golden flames. Looking down, he noticed a witch in Nilfgaardian robes attempting to halt his rampage. With a breath of dragon fire, he scorched the earth, leaving the witch's fate uncertain. The golden dragon's flames persisted until the Northern Kingdom's armies reached Mount Sodden. Observing the devastation, the king realized their intervention might no longer be necessary. The eternal flame had rendered the Nilfgaardian forces nearly extinct. John descended from the sky, his landing somewhat unsteady. The scale of his attack had taken a toll on him, a challenge he acknowledged would have been more daunting outside the forest's confines. The Brotherhood's wizards regrow, their eyes fixed on the sea of flames. After the golden dragon's descent, it vanished without a trace. "Yennefer, have you located John?" Triss inquired anxiously. Yennefer, employing her magic in an attempt to find him, found her efforts thwarted by the flames. "Could he have?" Coral, her voice trailing off, didn't need to finish her sentence. The implication was clear to all. Survival seemed impossible amidst such inferno. Yennefer, caught in a tumult of emotions, wondered if she should feel relief or despair at the thought of John's fate. To finalize the agreement with the other party, Yennefer was on edge. Yet, deep within, she harbored a peculiar conviction that the person in question had not perished. This inexplicable intuition left Yennefer riddled with confusion. As anticipated, the forces of the Northern Kingdom made their grand entrance. They ruthlessly pursued the black-clad soldiers who had retreated to the outskirts, showing no mercy. The battlefield was unforgiving, with only the relentless flames halting their advance. Amidst the swirling rumors and speculation regarding John's fate, an unexpected development occurred. On the hilt of the silver Wick sword, the 10th rune ignited with a mysterious glow. This sudden illumination caught everyone off guard. The lighting of the rune was a phenomenon wrapped in enigma, suggesting that the tales surrounding John might hold a grain of truth. Perhaps, against all odds, he had managed to survive the ordeal that many believed had claimed his life. The soldiers and onlookers alike were left in a state of suspense, their eyes fixed on the gleaming rune. It served as a beacon of hope for some, while for others it was a harbinger of unresolved mysteries yet to unfold. The battlefield, already a tapestry of chaos and despair, now also bore the weight of this new, intriguing development. As the flames continued to rage and the Northern Kingdom's army pressed on, the story of the Silver Wick sword and its 10th rune became a symbol of intrigue and speculation. What did this signify for John, and how would it shape the events to come? Only time would reveal the true impact of this momentous occurrence. Chapter 4:10 from Ancient Whispers. John stood on the scorched earth, surrounded by a forest ablaze with golden flames that seemed eternal. As the 10th rune illuminated, signaling the completion of his final trial, he realized that everything had come to an end, yet there was no sign of his return to the world he knew. Forces unseen battled for his fate, one striving to whisk him away, the other anchoring him to this fiery realm. Amidst the inferno, the white wolf reappeared, unscathed by the relentless flames. John and the wolf locked gazes, a silent understanding passing between them. In a sudden move, John plunged his sword, the silver wick, into the ground. The eternal flames were drawn into the sword, and the forest was plunged into darkness. The golden flames formed a vortex, extinguishing the fire that consumed the forest. With his wand in hand, John pointed towards the heavens. His body became enveloped in golden scales, and the power of the stars transformed into a celestial blue light that cascaded down upon the forest. He looked up at the white wolf, a mysterious smile playing on his lips. "Do you know the origin of the megalithic monument?" he asked, not waiting for a response before continuing. "When worlds overlap and celestial spheres align, the traces left behind form a massive stone monument capable of traversing worlds. The power of the stars pressed down, mingling with the remnants of the eternal fire, creating a dreamlike tableau of gold and blue upon the earth. As these forces converged, John infused the silver wick with magical power, causing the blade to tremble with energy. He then directed the sword towards the ground, summoning a magic circle of intricate lines and circles that rose from the earth. "I am refining a giant stone tablet," John declared. "My blood, belonging to another world, shall serve as the guide." Opening his palm, his blood transformed into a ruby that he levitated into the magic circle. Stones emerged from the ground, assembling into a tall, prism-shaped monolith that seemed to breathe life. "Blood trail," John intoned, using his blood as a conduit. The monolith pulsed, sending shockwaves through the surrounding area, obliterating the charred trees and leaving no trace of the corpses that lay there. The white wolf approached John, and a seductive voice within his heart urged him to kill the creature. However, John, having uncovered the truth, merely gazed at the wolf, conjuring a golden ribbon on his wand. Even if it is a disaster, it cannot transcend time. The ribbon, made of golden sand, formed a Mobius ring, which then appeared as a mark on the white wolf. Trapped in a temporal loop, the wolf could move forward but remained in place, unable to escape. As the monolith fully materialized, the force pulling John towards it strengthened. He approached the stone tablet, now a gateway to his original world. But just as he was about to step through, an ancient, nameless voice echoed in his heart. It spoke in an obscure tongue, yet John understood its message. The stone monument warned of other beings seeking passage into this world, a passage that should not exist. John realized the grave danger these beings posed, potentially plunging the world into chaos. The voice sought to dominate his will, compelling him to open the gateway. Resisting its influence, John pondered, could this be the god of this world? His expression shifted as he recalled his encounter with the god of death, now sensing the presence of other deities with unfathomable power. The white wolf remained caught in the temporal loop, and the monolith before John transformed into the gaping maw of an ancient beast. "Want to frighten me?" John muttered, steeling himself for the confrontation ahead, determined to protect the world from the unknown threats that lurked beyond the monolith. John steadied himself amidst the unceasing whispers, a trace of irritability brewing in his heart. "Let the stars guide my path," he murmured, his gaze hardening. Suddenly, from the corner of his eye, he spotted a familiar face. "Ambu," he began, but before he could finish, he was pulled into the passage within the megalithic monument. Distressed, he muttered, "Caught between dreams and reality, I've strayed from the right path." Shaking his head, he left the scorched earth behind, another figure reminiscent of Merlin fading into the landscape. With John's disappearance, the white wolf's form turned ethereal and eventually vanished. The massive stone monument crumbled, silencing the voices of those who had failed to enter. Everything returned to dust. In the aftermath, a blonde-haired woman approached the ruins, a red mark visible on her neck. "Where are you, Yadani?" she called out, searching for the witcher named Fry. Despite breaking free from the chains of fate, she found herself ensnared in another relentless quest. The Shrike sought the Black Witcher as the northern kingdoms triumphed over Nilfgaard. As dawn broke, a businessman, Jurga, transported a white-haired witcher in his carriage, heading towards his home. Grateful for being saved by the witcher, Jurga offered him the law of surprise. Upon arrival, Jurga's wife, Christides, greeted them, sharing tales of their adopted daughter and a mysterious traveler. "What is known yet unknown," Geralt mused, initially indifferent to the law of surprise. However, learning that the adopted daughter was an orphan from the battlefield, Geralt was taken aback and rushed into the forest. There he found the one he had been searching for. "Ciri," he whispered, encountering his unexpected child, Princess Ciriella of Cintra. Recalling her grandmother's words, Ciri had sought out Geralt of Rivia, and fate's gears began to turn, binding them together. Returning to Jurga's home, Ciri, though saddened to leave Christides, who had shown her motherly love, chose to follow Geralt. They set out for the battlefield, where Geralt intended to find Yennefer. The battlefield was a vision of hell, strewn with corpses and filled with the cries of soldiers. Ciri, riding on Geralt's mount, Rocky, was startled when she spotted a familiar horse, Polo, and called out to it, forgetting momentarily that Polo was deaf. She dismounted and approached Polo, hoping to find its owner. "Yadani," she shouted. Both Ciri and a blonde-haired woman named Fury, standing amidst the scorched earth, were surprised to hear the call. Geralt, recognizing the potential threat from Fury and her armed mercenaries, protectively positioned Ciri behind him, his hand on his steel sword. Fury, locking eyes with Ciri and memorizing her face, stated, "There is no Yanni here. Let's leave." With that, she departed with her men, allowing Geralt to breathe a sigh of relief. Despite the relief, Geralt felt an inexplicable guilt towards Fury, puzzled by its origin since their paths should never have crossed. Turning to Ciri, Geralt inquired, "You know Yadani?" As Ciri recounted her encounter with the Blood Cat, Geralt's concern deepened. Polo's presence hinted at an unforeseen event befalling its owner. "Stay here, Anne," Geralt began, his protective instincts kicking in as he prepared to uncover the truth behind Polo's solitary appearance. "Don't come down," Geralt insisted, his mind preoccupied with the urgent need to locate Yennefer. Meanwhile, Ciri, filled with anticipation, gently stroked Polo's head. Despite knowing that Polo couldn't hear her, she found comfort in whispering into his ear, "Maybe Yennefer doesn't know I'm here." She confided softly to Polo, hoping for some sense of connection. After an exhaustive search, Geralt and his companions found no trace of the elusive Black Witcher. Similarly, their efforts to locate the wizards, including the formidable John Wick, whose actions had dramatically shifted the tide of the battle, proved fruitless. Standing before the ruins of the once majestic monument, Yennefer's expression was one of concern. She rubbed her right hand thoughtfully, a mysterious mark briefly illuminating the back of her hand, hinting at unseen forces at play. Upon hearing the news of the wizard's disappearance, a fleeting look of intrigue crossed Wigfort's face. He quickly masked his reaction, turning to offer words of consolation to those gathered, celebrating their hard-fought victory amidst the uncertainty. Meanwhile, in the secluded confines of Jovanovich's castle, a remarkable scene unfolded. A spring burst forth, transforming into a magnificent water curtain that took the shape of a colossal stone tablet. As John emerged from this mystical barrier, the water curtain disintegrated, cascading back into the spring with a gentle murmur. He found himself alone, the familiar presence of his uncles nowhere to be found. Rubbing his temples, John pondered the possibility of facing the trials once again, a prospect that filled him with a mix of dread and determination. Just then, the timely sound of a system notification broke the silence, offering a glimmer of hope in the midst of uncertainty. Ding! This unexpected interruption suggested that John's journey was far from over, hinting at new challenges and adventures that lay ahead. As he stood in the quiet aftermath of the water curtain's collapse, John prepared himself for whatever the future might hold, guided by the mysterious forces that had brought him to this moment. Chapter 411, Brave Watson. Ding, the task is completed. You have received +1 to any attribute and the blessing, Leader. Leader. When leading a team, you will experience an all-around improvement, positively affecting the entire team. John had completed his trials, stepping back into the outside world. 7 days have passed here. The flow of time is indeed different, he mused, reflecting on the Dream Challenge's conclusion. As a wizard well-versed in the mysteries of time, he was keenly aware of the temporal discrepancies. He decided to review his attributes. First on the list was his magical power, which had seen little change. To upgrade from level 7 to level 100,000 required 6 magic power points, a daunting figure that underscored why so few wizards could ever hope to rival Voldemort. For most, reaching levels 5 and 6 represented the zenith of their capabilities. Currently, John's most potent spells were the Fire Curse and the Crushing Curse. Thanks to enhancements from the Fire Dragon and the Phoenix, his Blazing Curse had ascended to level 7, marking his first foray into such advanced magic. This spell, a fusion of Eternal Flame and Fiend Fire, had grown significantly in power. Meanwhile, the level 6 Shattering Curse, though not upgraded, had its potency increased. The trials had yielded substantial gains, notably in runes, alchemy, and ancient magic. His proficiency in ancient magic had climbed to level 4, with room for further growth. Alchemy, after refining a giant stone tablet, had reached its current limit, transitioning from a static state to one capable of further upgrades. His study in the palace library had not been in vain, as his knowledge of runes advanced to level 7. By the end of the trials, John had accumulated 3 additional random points, bringing his total to 7. He allocated 2 points to alchemy, elevating it to level 7, after which it reverted to a non-upgradable state. Turning his attention to ancient magic, he upgraded it to level 5. With 4 random points remaining, John reviewed his options. The Shattering Curse, Occlumency, Iron Armor Curse, and Transfiguration had all reached level 6. Only the Crushing Curse and the Iron Armor Curse were eligible for further upgrades, each requiring 2 points. After much deliberation, he chose to enhance the Iron Armor Curse to level 7, noticing a significant difference in its efficacy. He reserved the remaining 2 random points for unforeseen circumstances. Exiting the spring, John rubbed his right hand, feeling the faint presence of an unfinished contract linked to the void on its back. Summoning the sword of Silver Wick into his hand, he admired the 10 runes adorning its blade, each glowing with a distinct color. Passing the Sword of Trials has indeed augmented its magical power, he noted, comparing it favorably to the legendary Sword of Gryffindor. A smile graced his lips as the sword seemed to respond to his touch. After a final inventory check, John noticed the disappearance of several items, including gold coins from the Witcher world and a bear skin, which seemed to have become an illusion upon his departure from that realm. However, the seals and swordsmanship techniques he had acquired remained intact, bolstered by his enhanced understanding of ancient magic. Leaving the castle, John made his way down the mountain. Along the path, he encountered a brown bear, which behaved more like a docile puppy in his presence. Upon entering the Jovanovich household, he was immediately greeted by the sounds of a heated argument, broken porcelain, and the thud of fists striking flesh. His heart sank. Could his father be under attack by his uncles? Quickening his pace, John prepared to intervene, determined to protect his father without resorting to lethal force. No one, not even his grandfather, could deter him from this resolve. Jovanovich Sr., Andrei recoiled as a punch landed squarely on his cheek, threatening to shatter his aristocratic nose. "I want my son back." The usually mild-mannered and compliant man was now transformed, his demeanor akin to a lion in the throes of rage. Watson's eyes blazed with fury as he gripped the collar of Andrei, the man he had always feared, with both hands, emitting a guttural growl from deep within his throat. "Tell me, where is John Wick?" Andrei remained silent, a response that only served to fuel Watson's anger further. In his desperation, Watson seemed to forget that the man before him possessed the strength to snap a tree in half with his bare hands. His fists were bloodied, having collided with bone and stone, yet he appeared oblivious to the pain. He looked up, seeking the gaze of his respected father-in-law, a man of such stature that even the mayor paid him visits. Yet, faced with Watson's imploring look, the old man remained silent. "Yadani." Watson's voice broke through the tension. "He is John Wick," he roared, his voice laden with emotion. "My son, my own flesh and blood." His gaze swept over the assembled crowd, taking in the sight of the woman who dared not come closer and the men who remained silent. "If my son does not return, I will lose my mind. I will turn into a beast," Watson declared, his voice thick with warning. At that moment, he was no longer the London Underground gangster or the savvy financial manager. He was a father consumed by the fear of losing his child, a prospect far more terrifying than any other. "I will not harm you, but know this. You will be dead to me," Watson vowed, his words cutting through the air like a knife. Mrs. Wick, standing at a distance, covered her mouth in shock, unable to believe that her own father could be responsible for her son's disappearance. "Natasha," Alexei attempted to soothe his sister, only to receive a sharp slap that left a red mark on his face. Mrs. Wick, now standing firmly by her husband's side, was a force to be reckoned with. The alpha wolf of the Jovanovich family had been provoked, and even John's aunts dared not approach. Watson had discovered his son's disappearance the day after it happened. Initially, he hadn't been overly concerned, attributing John's absence to his adventurous spirit. However, by the third day, after confirming with Seryozha that John was indeed missing, his worry began to mount. By the fourth day, his requests to see his son were denied, and now, a week later, his frustration had erupted into a confrontation with his brother-in-law, Alexei. The Jovanovich family had been taken aback by John's unexpected return, especially after his encounter with the flying lion, an event that had left them unable to keep tabs on him. Their attempts to retrieve John had failed, leading them to conceal the truth temporarily. However, Watson, with his keen insight honed through years of dealing with people, had quickly sensed their guilt, fueling his anger. Just as the standoff reached a peak, John returned, his arrival catching everyone off guard. "What happened to you guys?" he asked, surprised to find his father in such a state. A gust of wind heralded his mother's swift approach, and John found himself enveloped in a gentle yet firm embrace. He struggled to look up, meeting his mother's tear-filled eyes. "I can't believe they put you through this," Mrs. Wick said, her voice trembling with emotion. Watson released Andrei, not without delivering a parting kick, a rare occurrence for him. Despite spraining his ankle in his rush to greet his son, Watson managed to smile through the pain. "John, where have you been?" he asked, holding back from embracing his son to avoid staining his clothes with blood. If John hadn't overheard Watson's earlier outburst, he might have mistaken the scene for a casual gathering. Seeing his father, who was typically the more reserved member of the family, driven to such lengths on his behalf, John couldn't help but smile, a reminder of his younger, more innocent days. "I'm fine, Dad," he reassured, stepping forward to hug Watson. Watson, momentarily stunned, reciprocated with a hearty pat on John's back. "It's fine," he said, his smile reflecting a childlike relief. The family reunion was a sight to behold, LD, drawing the attention of the Jovanovich clan. The grandfather, uncertain of the events that had transpired, hesitated before asking, "Yadani, have you succeeded?" It was clear that the grandfather and the others were unaware of the full extent of what had happened. John noticed his mother's fierce glare directed at his grandfather and signaled for calm, hoping to bridge the gap between misunderstanding and reconciliation. John's mother finally relaxed, witnessing the warm embrace of her family. Stepping out from his parents' arms, John gave his grandfather a slow nod. A broad smile spread across the old man's face, and he laughed heartily, declaring, "Then let's prepare for a feast." He turned to Andre and instructed, "Fetch the finest chef in the area, and remember, no violence." Andre, wiping the blood from his nose, paused as he passed Watson. Despite the punches Watson had landed, they hadn't done much damage to the Witcher, though Andre looked quite disheveled. Watson tensed, expecting a confrontation, but instead, Andre extended a serious welcome. "Welcome to the Jovanovich family, brother-in-law." Watson was momentarily stunned, realizing the hostility had vanished. He was now seen as part of the Jovanovich family, a father, a husband, his actions earning the respect of everyone. The banquet was a whirlwind for Watson, who found himself overwhelmed by the generous servings of alcohol. Meanwhile, John was pulled aside by his grandfather for a private conversation about the recent events. Through this discussion, John pieced together a theory. Perhaps the Jovanovich lineage was indeed from another world, but the Witcher's potions had altered them significantly here, stripping them of their amber eyes and their longevity. The following day, John's grandfather pored over the potion recipes John had brought from Kaer Morhen, realizing what the Jovanovich family had been missing. On the third day, John boarded his flight home, lost in thought as he gazed out at the engine that had been damaged by a bird strike. The calmness of the passengers struck him. They seemed unfazed by the incident. An elderly man nearby exclaimed with a hint of relief, "Only one engine was blown up. Last time it was 3. It was a reminder that those who chose to fly with Bear Airlines were well aware of its reputation. This peculiar acceptance of danger, much like the Jovanovich family's acceptance of Watson, reflected a resilience and adaptability John found both admirable and deeply human. As the plane soared above the clouds, John couldn't help but reflect on the unexpected bonds formed and the lessons learned from a family that, despite its peculiarities, had welcomed him with open arms. Chapter 412, Weasley's Wizard Wheezes Flourishes. Business at Weasley's Wizard Wheezes in Diagon Alley was thriving. Why worry about the mysterious man? You should be more concerned about constipation relief, the bane of the Chinese people. After returning home, John made his way to Diagon Alley. It must be acknowledged that the Weasley twins were not only immensely creative, but also daring. As they passed Weasley's Wizard Wheezes, some elderly wizards couldn't resist cautioning their grandchildren. "Look at those boys. They're courting danger with their boldness." The Weasley twins were among the first to openly mock Voldemort, a bold move that unsettled some wizards who had lived through his reign of terror. Despite the Ministry of Magic's assurance that Voldemort's followers had been apprehended, a palpable tension lingered, with many fearing Voldemort's return. However, not everyone was consumed by fear. While some mothers cautioned their children against staying out too late, life went on, and discussions about the most comfortable robes were not uncommon. The resurgence of Voldemort had inadvertently boosted sales of Defense Against the Dark Arts products, as evidenced by the significant increase in sales at Weasley's Wizard Wheezes. The Ministry of Magic, now fully funded and staffed, had bolstered its ranks of aurors and strikers, establishing multiple garrison points throughout Diagon Alley under the leadership of Barty Crouch Sr. This expansion necessitated the creation of a new office to regulate the influx of defensive magic products, leading to promotions within the ministry, including Arthur Weasley's appointment as the director of the Office of Detection and Confiscation of Counterfeit Defensive Spells and Protective Items. Despite these measures, the Ministry of Magic was keen to maintain the normalcy of wizarding life, understanding that Voldemort's immediate threat was minimal. His primary adversaries remained the Ministry, the Order of the Phoenix, and the Order of the Stars, rather than the general wizarding populace. Upon entering the bustling Weasley's Wizard Wheezes, John observed the twins, Fred and George, energetically attending to their customers. The shop was alive with laughter and the sound of transactions, as various magical prank items and daydream spells proved to be especially popular among the younger crowd. George, recognizing John, playfully greeted him with an exaggerated offer to lick the soles of your shoes, my lord, eliciting laughter from those around. John, amused yet exasperated, urged George to stop fooling around. George, still jesting, introduced himself as Fred, but quickly dropped the act to welcome John properly. The twins harbored no ill feelings towards John, despite his association with the Ministry of Magic. In fact, they were grateful for his investment, which had allowed them to secure a prime location in Diagon Alley and stand out among their competitors. Fred joined the conversation, half-jokingly chiding George for leaving him to handle the more inquisitive customers alone. He suggested that it might be time to consider hiring additional help to manage the growing demand for their magical wares. The chapter showcases the resilience and entrepreneurial spirit of the Weasley twins, their ability to find humor and opportunity even in the face of adversity, and the ongoing efforts of the wizarding community to adapt and thrive despite the shadow of Voldemort's threat. Fred extended his hand to John, cleared his throat, and adopted a mock-serious tone. "Greetings, my esteemed lord. May I have the honor of kissing your skirt?" "Regrettably, I'm not adorned in a skirt today," John replied with a shrug, his eyes twinkling with amusement. "Your minds are like treasure chests, always brimming with innovative ideas." George, with a playful smirk, asked, "Would you like to give it a try?" "No, thank you," John declined, shaking his head. "I appreciate that you don't judge me for it." "Why would we?" Fred inquired, genuinely puzzled. "You've compensated us, why? You've done nothing wrong." John glanced at George, who nodded in agreement. "I'm not bribing you," John clarified, picking up a dark mark-shaped candy. "I'm supporting you because your ideas are genuinely brilliant." The Weasley twins couldn't help but smile at the compliment. Everyone enjoys being praised, after all. George lightly reprimanded a young wizard attempting to sneak a dark mark candy into his pocket, then turned to John, curiosity evident in his voice. "So, what brings you here? Surely it's not just to admire two geniuses at work?" "I'm here to leverage your brilliant minds," John admitted without hesitation. "I aim to use the alchemy workshop to create some defensive artifacts." George hesitated, a hint of concern in his voice. "But we're already members of the Order of the Phoenix. Is it really wise to involve ourselves in this, especially after the recent conflict between the Order of the Stars and the Order of the Phoenix?" John smiled reassuringly. "This endeavor is for the greater good. If you're concerned, you can always purchase the finished products from Johnny Silverhand. I have no qualms about selling more." It was clear that John didn't consider the project to be confidential or problematic. Moreover, he believed the Weasley twins were perfectly suited for alchemy. "What do you think, Fred?" George asked. "It's your call, George," Fred replied, the twins sharing a knowing smile before agreeing to John's proposal. John promised them access to the alchemy workshop. As a token of gratitude, Fred offered John a bag of Charmander's roasted chestnuts, urging him to try them. "By the way, Hermione has been writing you a lot of letters," Fred mentioned tentatively. "She even came to your door to apologize." "No need," John responded, his tone neutral as he ate a chestnut. "She made a choice that she believed in, and I respect that." After placing the bag of chestnuts into his satchel, John headed towards the door. Fred watched him leave, a look of concern on his face. "Do you think he's upset?" George inquired. "Remember Percy? He hasn't spoken to Dad in over a month," Fred sighed. "I've never seen John like this before." "Yeah, even when we turned his badge into a joke, he wasn't this distant," George added. The Weasley family was in turmoil. Mr. Weasley had never imagined his son Percy would distance himself over their affiliations with Dumbledore and the Star Society's actions against the Death Eaters. The complexity of their emotions made it difficult for Mr. Weasley to approach Percy, despite several attempts. "Hey, George," Fred said after a moment of silence. "If you were in danger, I'd go to the ends of the earth to save you." George remained silent, contemplating. Maybe John feels the same way, Fred concluded. Back on Privet Road, Watson found solace in the familiarity of home, despite the myriad of challenges awaiting him. As the underground emperor of London, he was embroiled in the complexities of establishing a national hotel chain, dealing with investors, and navigating the murky waters of his business ventures. Descending into the basement, John approached the heart of the house's magical defenses. Here, he inserted a red gem into the hilt of Silver Wick's sword, a testament to his mastery of level 7 alchemy. John had discovered that he could refine the Philosopher's Stone at will, without encountering the significant bottlenecks that usually plagued alchemists. With the aid of Ravenclaw's crown, he had successfully reforged a Philosopher's Stone, which he then used to enhance the Sword of Silver Wick. As he was on the verge of refining a third Philosopher's Stone, a sudden intuition halted his actions. He realized the dangers of creating too many of these powerful artifacts. There must be a limit, he thought to himself, acknowledging the potential consequences of his actions. Thus, he abandoned the idea of crafting a third Philosopher's Stone. In the dimly lit basement, John blinked his right eye, which had become slightly blurry, a side effect he had noticed after emerging from the spring. His familiars, Basil and Riddle, fluttered towards the cabinet, drawing his attention. Deciding to test a theory, John transformed into his dragon form, Longtooth. Remarkably, his vision immediately cleared. Could it be tied to my true name? He mused, pondering the connection between his identity and the peculiar symptom. Emerging from the basement, John was met by an unexpected visitor, Dudley. The encounter was unforeseen, and John braced himself for the interaction, wondering what could have brought Dudley to his doorstep. Chapter 413. Visiting the Dursleys. Dudley Dursley had undergone a remarkable transformation. The once overweight boy had shed his excess pounds, replacing them with muscle. This change not only made him more physically fit, but also somewhat more attractive. Rumor had it that he had even found a girlfriend at school. John couldn't help but think that the concept of young love was completely lost on these people. It was Dudley's first time visiting the Wick residence of his own accord. His previous visit had been under less voluntary circumstances, after an unfortunate incident involving a piece of tongue-tying taffy which John had helped resolve. Upon his arrival, Dudley's demeanor was surprisingly reserved, a stark contrast to his reputation as a school bully, a title he had earned through his prowess in boxing. When John greeted him, Dudley stood up instinctively, almost as if he were in the presence of a superior. John, sensing the formality, invited him to sit and inquired about the purpose of his visit. Dudley hesitated at first, but eventually voiced his concerns. My mother mentioned that a murderer has been released? Voldemort, I believe? It was clear that Dudley had only a vague understanding of the situation, likely pieced together from overheard conversations among Harry and his friends. John encouraged him to continue, and Dudley's fear became evident. This man, he would kill people like us, wouldn't he? He killed Harry's parents. The fear in Dudley's voice was palpable. My mum didn't say much, but I can tell she's scared. Could I ask you to protect us? John considered the request. Dudley, in a bid to make his plea more appealing, quickly added, We can pay if necessary. I'm sure we can afford it. It was clear that Dudley had little faith in Harry's ability to protect them and viewed the Wick family as their only reliable safeguard. After a moment of thought, John responded, I have school commitments and can't be here to protect you at all times. Dudley's face fell at this, but John quickly added, However, I do have another solution. He then retrieved 3 items from the basement, a puppy sculpture, a wizard chess soldier from Watson's collection, and a wooden shield. Place these around your home. They will protect you if anyone tries to invade. These were no ordinary items. The puppy sculpture and the chess soldier had been enchanted with transfiguration and enlargement spells, making them formidable protectors against most wizards. The wooden shield was imbued with an iron armor charm and an exorcism charm, capable of expanding into a barrier to repel intruders. John had developed these as a new line of home defense products, yet to be released to the public, but he was willing to let the Dursleys use them first. Dudley was ecstatic and thanked John profusely. Before he left, John offered some parting words. Dudley, you've grown up. It's time to learn how to protect your family. Dudley was taken aback by the acknowledgement, leaving the Wick residence in a daze of newfound responsibility. Upon returning home, his mother, Petunia, noticed his distracted state and worriedly asked if he had been bullied at school. "It's okay, Mom," Dudley reassured her, his gaze falling on a family portrait showcasing his recent boxing championship win. The pride in his father Vernon's eyes that day had been unmistakable. "Mom," Dudley suddenly asked, "do you think I'm a good boy?" "Of course," Petunia replied with a kind smile. "You will always be my good son." In that moment, Dudley resolved to change his ways, distancing himself from the school bullies he once associated with. He glanced towards Harry's room, pondering the changes unfolding within him. Even Vernon, engrossed in his newspaper in the living room, sensed something different about his son. "What's wrong with him?" Vernon mused, looking up from his paper, sensing the shift in the air. The Dursley household, it seemed, was on the cusp of change, driven by Dudley's newfound maturity and sense of responsibility. Vernon Dursley, puzzled by the assortment of items on the table, picked up a wooden shield with a newfound interest. "Has he joined the drama club?" he asked, eyeing the shield curiously. The evening came, and after dinner, the Dursleys watched as Harry hurried upstairs. Over the years, they had come to regard Harry almost as if he were invisible, a mere ghost within their home. "Son, did you make this?" Vernon inquired, holding up a puppy sculpture with a mix of curiosity and admiration for what he presumed was Dudley's craftsmanship. "I got it from Wick's," Dudley replied, his mouth full of chicken breast. "It's supposed to protect us." "What?" Vernon exclaimed, his hands trembling and his eyes wide with shock. "You mean that kid Wick gave you this thing?" Petunia, pausing her cleaning, joined them to examine the curious sculpture. As time ticked by, Harry was upstairs, filled with anticipation. Dumbledore had written to him 3 days prior, promising to pick him up from the Burrow at 11 that night. Since 7 o'clock, Harry had been perched by his bedroom window, keeping a vigilant watch over Privet Drive. He had even memorized Dumbledore's letter, clinging to every word. Despite the turmoil at the Ministry of Magic, Dumbledore had chosen to place his faith in the prophecy, a prophecy Harry knew in full, thanks to Dumbledore. The one with the power to vanquish the Dark Lord approaches, born as the 7th month dies. It spoke of a child born at the end of July, marked by Voldemort as his equal, possessing powers unknown to the Dark Lord. This child, as the prophecy foretold, was the only one capable of defeating Voldemort. Dumbledore had explained that there were 2 boys who fit the prophecy's criteria, Harry and Neville Longbottom. However, the crux of the matter was not who was born, but whom Voldemort chose to mark as his equal. By choosing Harry, Voldemort had unwittingly selected his own nemesis. Dumbledore's uncertainty about the Horcruxes lingered in Harry's mind. John had claimed superiority in matters of the soul, but to Harry, Dumbledore had always been the epitome of invincibility. As the minutes passed, Harry's anticipation turned to anxiety. Doubts crept in. Had his owl failed to deliver his response to Dumbledore? Was this all some cruel joke? Could Dumbledore have been detained? Finally, as the clock struck 12, the streetlights outside flickered off, plunging the world into darkness. This sudden change jolted Harry into action. He saw a tall figure in a long cloak approaching the house. The figure paused momentarily before continuing along the garden path. Harry, electrified by the sight, scrambled to pack his belongings into his suitcase, though his movements were clumsy and slow. The doorbell rang, and he heard Uncle Vernon's confused mutterings downstairs. Harry realized he had forgotten to inform the Dursleys of Dumbledore's impending visit. Rushing down the stairs, Harry reached the door just as it opened. Dumbledore's deep voice greeted them. "Good evening. You must be Mr. Dursley? I believe Harry must have mentioned my coming to pick him up, right?" Vernon, taken aback, could only stare at the imposing figure before him. Dumbledore's silver-white hair and beard, his half-moon glasses perched on his hooked nose, and his black traveling cloak were unmistakable. "Judging by your surprised and disbelieving expression, it seems Harry didn't inform you of my visit," Dumbledore said, his tone gentle, yet firm. "However, let's proceed as if you've graciously invited me inside. It's unwise to linger at the doorstep in these uncertain times." With those words, Dumbledore stepped forward, about to cross the threshold into the house, when suddenly the wooden shield that had been brought into the house earlier that day. A blinding light suddenly erupted, signaling the arrival of trouble. Expel! John, who had just returned today, had gone to invite the Weasley twins over, leaving him some time to ascend to his attic. Basil, his pet, flapped its wings eagerly and flew towards its exclusive pal, wardrobe. As John approached the window, he noticed letters being stuffed into the gap. He opened the window to retrieve the letters and was about to close it when he caught sight of the Dursleys' house, illuminated by a mysterious white light. Puzzled, he paused, his thoughts racing. The items had been taken in the afternoon and activated at night. Could it be possible that Harry had suddenly decided to target the Dursleys? The notion seemed far-fetched, yet the timing and the events unfolding before him suggested a connection. The light from the Dursleys' house was not just any ordinary light. It had the distinct mark of magic, a kind that was not meant for benign purposes. John couldn't help but wonder about the implications of this sudden development. Was Harry involved, or was there another player in the shadows orchestrating these events? The situation demanded investigation, and John knew he couldn't ignore the signs. The peaceful night had taken an unexpected turn, and the tranquility of the moment was shattered by the looming threat. The Dursleys, despite their faults, were unwittingly caught in a magical crossfire, and John felt a sense of urgency to unravel the mystery before it escalated further. With a deep sense of foreboding, John closed the window, the letters in his hand momentarily forgotten. The events of the night had taken a sinister turn, and he knew that the answers he sought lay beyond the confines of his attic. The glow from the Dursleys' house served as a beacon of trouble, and John was determined to get to the bottom of it, for the sake of both the magical and non-magical worlds. Chapter 4:14, Hermione's Apology Letter. Clearly, Harry hadn't suddenly developed a murderous intent towards the Dursleys. From his vantage point, John observed the elderly man being propelled out of the door, a sight that brought a slight smirk to his face. It appeared that even Meng Lang, revered as the foremost authority in the magical world, had his lapses. Harry, trailing behind, looked utterly bewildered by the sudden turn of events. The 7th-level iron armor curse only repels individuals when Dumbledore's attention is elsewhere, John mused, catching a glimpse of a pair of eyes glancing in his direction. With a flick of his wand, he drew the curtains closed and tapped the wall, ensuring no external probes could penetrate their privacy. Despite the ability to read the letter in the dim light, John preferred the clarity that illumination provided. The bulk of the correspondence he received bore a single, familiar address. They were from Hermione. With a thoughtful expression, John meticulously sorted through the letters, setting them aside. He then proceeded to open the other pieces of mail. Among them was a letter of gratitude from Lucius Malfoy. Despite being aware that the recipient was his son's friend, Lucius's tone was respectful. Narcissa Malfoy, too, had sent a letter, expressing her concerns alongside her thanks. They both lamented the Order of the Phoenix's role in disrupting their defection from Voldemort. Concerned about Voldemort's vengeance? John pondered, his finger motioning towards a drawer that slid open to reveal a quill. He penned a response to Narcissa, acknowledging her worries. With 2 Dark Lords at large, either posed a significant threat to a family like the Malfoys, especially Voldemort, who, having witnessed the power of the Holy Grail, would undoubtedly shift his focus towards it. Let's spread the word that Hogwarts harbors a secret to eternal life, John decided, entrusting Narcissa with this delicate task. Given her unblemished record and the trust Voldemort still placed in her, she was the ideal candidate for this mission. The next letter John opened was an invitation to the Slug Club from the new headmaster, Slughorn. It seemed Slughorn was taking advantage of Voldemort's setback, eager to resume his collection of promising talents. Despite his new role, Slughorn couldn't abandon his old habits. To him, John was a prized addition to his collection of geniuses. John, however, was not swayed by the invitation and filed it away. Slughorn's eagerness only highlighted his need for John, not the other way around. Revealing one's hand too early in the game seldom yields the best outcome. As John was about to reach for another letter, a knock on the window diverted his attention. An owl was pecking at the glass, seeking entry. Upon opening the window, the owl flew in, delivering yet another letter from Hermione. The sheer volume of letters suggested she had written almost daily. John chuckled to himself, recalling his first encounter with Hermione at Platform 9 3/4, both of them naive and uninitiated into the complexities of the magical world. He began to organize the letters, starting with the earliest one. Hermione's letter was densely packed with words, a lengthy discourse filled with apologies. As he read, John could almost see Hermione's reflection in the pile of letters on the table, her remorse and guilt palpable through her repeated apologies. Yet, amidst the sea of regret, John sensed a deeper, unspoken sentiment waiting to be uncovered. John stood on the precipice of a decision, the weight of consequence heavy in his heart. With a deep breath, he closed his eyes, surrendering to the choice he was about to make. The quill, dipped in ink, hovered above the parchment. He watched, almost in slow motion, as the ink gathered at the tip, threatening to spill over before he finally committed to paper the words that had been haunting him. As he set the quill down, the ink dried almost instantly, sealing his fate. He tucked the letter away, deciding to wait for Basil's return before sending it off. Opening a drawer, John's gaze fell upon a silver pocket watch, its surface adorned with delicate lilies. It was a beautiful, yet somber reminder of the time that was slipping away. Upon Basil's return, John handed him both the pocket watch and the letter. Despite Basil's protests, which were quickly quelled by the offer of a small dried fish, the task was accepted. Meanwhile, Dumbledore had arrived to collect Harry. However, his appearance was slightly amiss, his beard singed at the edges, a testament to some unseen mishap. Harry, puzzled by the day's strange events, including a wooden dog sculpture that had inexplicably come to life and attacked, found himself whisked away by Dumbledore before he could dwell on these mysteries any longer. Dumbledore, with a sense of urgency, instructed Harry to don his invisibility cloak. Despite the chaos that Voldemort was likely embroiled in, precautions were necessary. With a flick of his wand, Dumbledore sent Harry's luggage and Hedwig ahead to the burrow. The two then stood at Privet Drive, where Dumbledore asked Harry to grasp his arm tightly. With a sensation vastly different from using a portkey, Harry felt as though he was being compressed into an impossibly small space. When they reappeared, the cold evening air and the relief of being solid once again brought tears to his eyes. They found themselves in what appeared to be an abandoned village, with a monument standing solemnly in the center. Dumbledore, concerned, checked on Harry, who, despite the discomfort, assured him he was all right, albeit with a preference for broomstick travel. As they ventured into the quiet village, Dumbledore inquired about Harry's scar, a topic that brought a dull response from Harry. It hadn't pained him since the incident at the Ministry of Magic. Dumbledore's reaction was a mix of relief and regret, hinting at deeper truths yet to be uncovered. The conversation shifted to John, or Johnny Silverhand, as Harry knew him. Dumbledore's admission of his own shortcomings in John's eyes revealed a complex relationship between the two. They continued their walk, the destination still unknown to Harry, until Dumbledore revealed they were in Budleigh Barberton to visit an old colleague. This visit, Dumbledore hinted, was not just a courtesy call, but a quest for knowledge and perhaps an introduction for Harry. The cold night air and the mystery of their journey left Harry with more questions than answers, especially as to why they hadn't simply apparated directly to their destination. Dumbledore's choice suggested that the journey itself, as much as the destination, held significance. As rude as kicking open the door of someone's house, Dumbledore remarked. Politeness dictates that we offer other wizards the opportunity to deny us entry. Most wizarding homes are protected by magic to ward off unwelcome apparitions. For some reason, Harry's thoughts drifted to Dumbledore's visit to the Dursleys. Dumbledore had insisted on entering, despite the potential for being forcefully repelled. It seemed that unwelcome guests could indeed be rejected. Harry shook his head, dismissing the thought. For instance, Hogwarts prohibits apparition within the castle and its grounds. Harry interjected, recalling Hermione Granger's explanation. Indeed, she is correct. Now we must turn left here, Dumbledore said, adjusting his beard. Their journey felt prolonged as they engaged in various discussions, including topics concerning the Ministry of Magic. Barty Crouch was a formidable figure, Dumbledore reflected with a hint of emotion. He made extensive preparations before Voldemort's return. I doubt I could have managed without causing a disturbance in the wizarding world's order. Still, the surge in sales of Defense Against the Dark Arts supplies in every household seems a bit excessive, Dumbledore mused. Eventually, they reached their destination. The sight that greeted them was disheartening, a house with a broken front door hinge and the door hanging askew. It was an O, menace sign. Chapter 415, Correspondence. Dumbledore lit his wand, casting light on a narrow hallway with an open door to the left. Harry followed closely behind Dumbledore into the drawing room, which was in complete disarray. The grandfather clock was shattered, its face cracked, and the pendulum had been flung across the room. A piano lay overturned, its black and white keys scattered like lost teeth. Shards of broken chandeliers sparkled menacingly on the floor, and the rug was tossed aside, its feathers spilling out like secrets. Dumbledore raised his wand higher, illuminating the walls splattered with a sticky, dark red substance. The sight made Harry gasp in horror. "It's not a pretty sight, is it?" Dumbledore said solemnly. "A terrible incident occurred here." They tread cautiously into the center of the room, stepping over the debris. A sense of foreboding filled the air, yet thankfully there was no body to be found. There was a struggle, and then they either dragged the victim away or he managed to escape. "Right, Professor?" Harry ventured, trying to find a silver lining despite the ominous blood splatters. A drop of thick, dark red blood fell from the ceiling onto Harry's forehead. Dumbledore, upon noticing this, dipped his finger into the blood on Harry's forehead and tasted it. His expression shifted as he discerned something from the taste. Initially surprised and worried, Dumbledore's expression soon settled into one of calm determination. "I don't think so," he finally said, gripping his old wand more tightly. "You mean he's still here?" Harry asked, puzzled. Without a word, Dumbledore pressed the tip of his wand into the upholstery of a bulging armchair, which let out a surprised "ouch!" With a twinkle in his eye, Dumbledore greeted, "Good evening, Horace." Before their eyes, the armchair transformed into a bald, portly old man who stood up, rubbing his stomach where the wand had poked him. "You didn't have to jab so hard," he complained. The man, dressed in a patterned suit that matched the armchair, was Horace Slughorn. As he stood, his body seemed to deflate from the armchair's bulging form to his own shorter, thinner stature. "Why did you reveal yourself?" Dumbledore asked, amused. "My dear Horace," Dumbledore continued, "if something had happened to you, we wouldn't find a wall splattered with dragon blood." Slughorn sighed. Yes, I should have realized. Who discovered the 12 uses of dragon's blood, after all?" His voice trailed off as he noticed Harry standing beside Dumbledore, his eyes lighting up as if he had stumbled upon a treasure. Dumbledore, feigning ignorance to Slughorn's reaction, introduced them. "Let me introduce you. This is my old colleague, Horace Slughorn. Horace, I believe you know who this is." "Harry Potter," Slughorn said, his gaze fixed on Harry. Feeling the weight of Slughorn's stare, Harry shifted uncomfortably, unsure of how to react. "If you don't mind, would you like me to tidy up a bit?" Dumbledore offered politely. "Please," Slughorn responded. With a wave of his wand, Dumbledore set the room to rights. Furniture leaped back into place, ornaments reassembled in midair, and torn books mended themselves before arranging neatly on the shelves. The oil lamp floated back to its table, reigniting to cast a warm glow over the room. Under Dumbledore's skilled magic, the chaos was undone, leaving no trace of the mess. Even the bloodstains on the wall vanished without a trace. As Harry heard the tinkling of glass, he looked down to see a glass pendant from the chandelier under his foot. He quickly moved aside, allowing the pendant to rejoin its fellows, restoring the chandelier to its former glory. "Dragon blood has been scarce in the market recently," Dumbledore commented casually as he restored a fallen bottle with a flick of his wand. "Where did you manage to find it?" "That's my last bottle," Slughorn admitted, his tone a mix of pride and regret. Slughorn replied, his voice tinged with sincerity. "It's just that Lily was exceptionally talented, truly one of a kind." The conversation about the scarcity of dragon blood had taken an unexpected turn, leading to a more personal exchange between Harry and Slughorn. The mention of the dragon's escape in Romania, as recounted by Charlie Weasley, had initially piqued Harry's interest. However, it was the awkward exchange between Dumbledore and Slughorn that captured his attention. Dumbledore's gentle probing and Slughorn's hesitant acceptance of a drink hinted at a deeper history between the two, one that Harry could not fully grasp. As Dumbledore and Slughorn reminisced, albeit awkwardly, about old times, Harry found himself feeling oddly conspicuous in his seating arrangement. Slughorn's fleeting glances and Dumbledore's cryptic comments left Harry feeling out of place, a pawn in a game he didn't understand. The conversation shifted to Slughorn's recent appointment as headmaster of Hogwarts, a position he assumed with reluctance. Despite his fears of the Death Eaters and the shadow of Voldemort still looming large, Slughorn had stepped into Dumbledore's shoes, albeit with reservations. Dumbledore's reassurance and gentle ribbing about the Defense Against the Dark Arts position highlighted the complex dynamics at play. Harry's surprise at being suddenly highlighted by Dumbledore as a potential candidate for the Defense Against the Dark Arts role was evident. Dumbledore's playful wink and subsequent excuse to use the bathroom left Harry in an awkward silence with Slughorn. The conversation between Harry and Slughorn then took a more personal turn, with Slughorn reminiscing about Harry's mother, Lily. The mention of Lily's exceptional talent, despite her Muggle-born status, struck a chord with Harry, reminding him of the prejudices still present in the wizarding world. Slughorn's attempt to clarify his stance on Muggle-borns was cut short by Harry's interjection, highlighting the sensitivity of the topic. As the conversation unfolded, it became clear that Slughorn was not merely a figure from the past, but a key player in the present, holding valuable insights and connections. Dumbledore's strategic engagement with Slughorn, coupled with Harry's own interactions, hinted at the larger battles to come, both within Hogwarts and beyond. Slughorn spoke hastily, his tone warm with nostalgia. "Your mother was always one of my favorite students. I often told her she belonged in my house." As he mentioned this, Slughorn wasn't upset. Instead, he smiled slightly. "I usually received quite spirited responses from her." "Which house were you in?" Harry inquired. "I was the head of Slytherin," Slughorn replied. Upon hearing this, Harry's expression soured slightly. Slughorn, noticing Harry's discomfort, quickly added, "Oh, come on, don't hold that against me. I suspect you're much like her, a Gryffindor, yes?" His smile broadened as he gestured towards the numerous gleaming photo frames on the cabinet, each showcasing a moving figure. "Look, there's your mother, right at the front." Harry stepped closer, with Slughorn standing by his side. He saw a picture of his mother, young and vibrant, standing next to a younger Slughorn, surrounded by a group of students. Slughorn, with evident pride, began to introduce the notable figures in the collection. "You must recognize Barnabas Guffey, the editor of the Daily Prophet. I've always made it a point to share my views on current events with him through Owlpost. But in recent years, he's been replaced by another editor. Honestly, I never expected Rita to take over the editor's chair. She had a penchant for spreading gossip back in her school days," Slughorn commented. As Harry's gaze drifted away from the picture of his mother, Slughorn continued, mentioning the captain of the Holyhead Harpies, Gwenog Jones, the owner of the Honeyduke's candy shop, and Sirius's younger brother, Regulus Black. Slughorn expressed his regret at having taught every member of the Black family except for Sirius. Noticing a peculiar basket among the photos, Harry asked, "What's that, Slughorn?" Lost eye, and his reminiscences, paused before answering, "Oh, that's a letter from John Wick. He often poses quite challenging questions. I need to ponder them before I can reply. He's truly a brilliant mind." "It was the same when he was at school," Harry remarked, his emotions mixed, unsure of what else to say. "He was always top of the class, unrivaled." Slughorn seemed taken aback by this revelation. "My goodness, I'd forgotten you were in the same year as him." Although he never taught John Wick, Slughorn felt honored even to correspond with him, placing his letter prominently on the cabinet. Harry managed a weak smile, his attention lingering on the few letters he had received. Wondering about the nature of the correspondence between John and Slughorn, he realized it must be significant if it required the intellect of someone Dumbledore had praised for their brilliance. Chapter 416, Fleur's Love. Let's shift our conversation, Dumbledore suggested, noting the atmosphere had turned somewhat somber after Slughorn broached another subject. He mentioned you have a knack for defense against the dark arts, Shu observed, trying to lighten the mood. Slughorn, with a tone of admiration, added, Your academic record speaks volumes. I must say, I'm quite impressed. The quality of education in defense against the dark arts at Hogwarts has always been a contentious issue, Slughorn confided, lowering his voice. For various reasons, many capable wizards shy away from this role. As the new headmaster of Hogwarts, this predicament was a significant concern for Slughorn, despite Severus Snape's recommendation of a potential candidate. After a moment of contemplation, Harry suggested, Professor Remus Lupin was an exceptional defense against the dark arts teacher during my 3rd year. Ah, Remus, Slughorn reminisced. He was quite distinct from his peers, always the responsible one, even as a prefect. And then there was Sirius Black, a brilliant, albeit mischievous member of the Black family. Slughorn had always been impressed by Lupin and his friends, their remarkable talents often earning his favor. I recall the incident with Sirius Black's escape from Azkaban. It was a grave misjudgment, Slughorn mused thoughtfully. Interrupting the conversation, Dumbledore emerged from his lengthy visit to the bathroom, holding a magazine. Horace, might I take this sweater-knitting magazine? He asked, as if the question was an afterthought. Of course, Slughorn replied, taken aback. Are you leaving already? Yes, I believe you have more pressing matters to attend to, Dumbledore responded kindly. The responsibilities of a headmaster are quite demanding, after all. You might not be aware, but there are certain aspects of Hogwarts that are particularly vulnerable to external threats, Dumbledore added, subtly hinting at the need for increased security. He then gestured for Harry to follow him as they prepared to leave. Slughorn, caught off guard, called out to them, Dumbledore, perhaps retirement isn't quite suited for you. Surprised, Dumbledore turned around as Slughorn continued, I believe Hogwarts could benefit from strengthened defenses. Your assistance would be invaluable. I'd be delighted to help, Dumbledore agreed with a slight nod and a chuckle as the garden door closed behind them. Nice job, Harry, Dumbledore praised. I didn't do anything, Harry replied, genuinely surprised. You did. You helped Horace make a decision, Dumbledore explained. He's always been cautious, and if it weren't for the fall of the Death Eaters, he wouldn't have considered the headmaster position. Dumbledore's eyes twinkled with wisdom. Horace enjoys the finer things in life and the company of the successful and powerful. He prefers being a benefactor rather than wielding power directly, finding the world more expansive and flexible from the sidelines. But he's the headmaster now, Harry pointed out, puzzled. That's hardly a secondary role. Indeed, it's a position of significance, Dumbledore acknowledged, as if to suggest it wasn't the role that defined Slughorn. Yet, there's an element of reluctance in his acceptance of the role. You mean? John? Harry ventured, trying to follow Dumbledore's train of thought. It was both you and John, Harry, Dumbledore clarified, reminiscing. Horace has always had a talent for identifying students with potential for greatness, whether for their ambition, intelligence, talent, or charm. Horace excels at creating networks, establishing a club at the heart of it all. He relishes the benefits these connections bring, offering support to his students in return, Dumbledore explained. Harry's thoughts drifted to John Wick, who, unlike Slughorn, built a network more akin to a following. I share this not to sway your opinion of Horace, but to highlight his intentions. John is unlike any student. He refuses to be anyone's trophy, so tread carefully, Dumbledore advised, emphasizing the importance of understanding the dynamics at play. Harry felt a shiver run down his spine, his palms slick with sweat. Dumbledore paused at the church door, turning to Harry with a calm demeanor. Have you been keeping up with the Daily Prophet these past 2 weeks? He inquired. Yes, Harry replied, his heart rate accelerating suddenly. The incident in the Hall of Prophecy was widely reported, wasn't it? Dumbledore continued. Yes, Harry responded, puzzled by the question. Is there something I should be asking, Professor? Dumbledore's expression was inscrutable in the night. Did you notice the complete absence of any mention of the Stars Club? He asked, his voice steady. Harry's heart skipped a beat, and he felt sweat bead on his forehead as he realized that indeed there had been no mention of the Quunxing Club in the Daily Prophet. He also remembered the mix-up with Johnny Silverhand, not John Wick. Struggling for words, Harry asked, "Why is that, Professor?" Dumbledore's face remained unreadable. "Avert your eyes," he said cryptically, leaving Harry disoriented. It was clear to Harry that Dumbledore was orchestrating something complex, the purpose of which was elusive. With Dumbledore's departure from the headmaster position, Harry saw more clearly the impending danger Hogwarts faced. Voldemort's fixation on the prophecy and his quest for immortality were bound to bring the battle to Hogwarts. Harry understood that Dumbledore was making preparations for the inevitable catastrophe. In the Stars Club group chat, news that Fleur seemed to be in love sparked curiosity and surprise. Everyone was eager to know who had captured the heart of the usually proud Fleur. Even John found himself intrigued. Percy revealed, "Don't speculate, it's Bill." "Bill? Bill Weasley?" Neville asked, astonished. "Yes, my brother," Percy confirmed, causing a flurry of reactions. John was taken aback, wondering how Fleur and Bill had crossed paths. Percy explained that their meeting was due to work connections. Bill was affiliated with the Order of the Phoenix, and Fleur with the Order of Stars, with their only common link being Percy, a Weasley family member in the Star Society. Fleur, employed at Yinsho Angel Investment, faced challenges due to her accent. Seeking help, she approached Percy, who offered his monotonous, almost hypnotic teaching style. Regretting not asking Cedric instead, Fleur's path crossed with Bill's when he visited his brother amidst a family conflict. Bill, charmed by the beautiful Triwizard Tournament participant, began visiting frequently, winning Fleur over with his humor and good looks. Draco, learning of Fleur's affection for a member of the Order of the Phoenix, couldn't hide his disdain. Fleur, undeterred, expressed her happiness and hinted at possibly drawing Bill closer to the Order of Stars. Malfoy's sour comment about Bill's lack of need to join the Star Club was met with Percy highlighting Bill's academic and leadership achievements, silencing Malfoy's skepticism. John expressed his support for Fleur's decision, emphasizing that it was her affection for Bill that mattered most, not Bill's accomplishments. Fleur, touched by John's words, smiled, appreciating the genuine fondness and admiration that John inspired. This wasn't romantic love, but a deep-seated respect and desire to connect, possibly influenced by the vibrant and bold spirit of France. It was quite unexpected to hear such words come from Fleur's mouth. Meanwhile, at the Greengrass residence, Astoria observed her sister's beautiful face contort into a fierce expression. This sight was so alarming that Astoria found herself treading lightly, almost on tiptoes, as if afraid to make a sound. Fleur, known for her grace and poise, rarely displayed such intensity. The situation must have been dire for her to express herself in such a manner. Astoria, on the other hand, was not accustomed to seeing her sister, Daphne, show such raw emotion. The transformation was startling, causing a mix of fear and curiosity to bubble within her. The atmosphere in the Greengrass house had become tense, a stark contrast to its usual serene and aristocratic ambiance. The sisters, each dealing with the situation in their own way, found themselves at a crossroads. Astoria, the younger and more sensitive of the two, felt a growing concern for her sister. Daphne's anger was not just a fleeting moment of frustration, it hinted at deeper issues that had yet to surface. As Astoria navigated the delicate dynamics of her family, she couldn't help but wonder what had caused such a drastic change in her sister. The Greengrass family, known for their composure and decorum, was now showing cracks in their facade. Astoria realized that the events unfolding were not just about her sister's temper, but were indicative of larger, perhaps more sinister, undercurrents at play. In this moment of uncertainty, Astoria knew she had to tread carefully. The Greengrass family was on the brink of something significant, and how they chose to handle it could define their future. As the younger sibling, Astoria felt a mix of responsibility and apprehension. She knew that the path ahead would be fraught with challenges, but she also understood the importance of family unity. As the story unfolds, the Greengrass sisters must navigate the complexities of their situation, confronting not only their personal demons, but also the expectations placed upon them by their family and society. In a world where appearances are everything, the truth often lies hidden beneath the surface. waiting to be discovered. Chapter 417, John's Exam Results. As the topic of exams came up, John remembered that it had been a month since he had taken the owl exams. He anticipated that his results should have arrived by now. The following day, an owl arrived with his results, but it was momentarily thwarted by Basil, who was guarding the window. The owl, having no other choice, reluctantly handed over the letter to Basil. Riddle, maintaining his usual aloof demeanor, perched atop the closet, observing the scene from a distance. Tom, curious about the commotion, attempted to approach, but found himself too short to retrieve the letter from Basil's mouth. John finally managed to get the letter and quickly scanned through his report card. His scores were as follows: Astronomy, O. Care of magical creatures, O. Charms, O. Defense against the dark arts, O. Divination, O. Herbology, O. History of magic, O. Potions, O. Transfiguration, O. Arithmancy, O. Muggle studies, O. Ancient runes. The letter O stood for outstanding, E for exceeds expectations, A for acceptable, P for poor, D for dreadful, and T for troll. Despite the challenges, including a visit to the school hospital on the last day of exams, John had achieved outstanding in all 12 subjects. As he reflected on his achievements, a badge he was wearing vibrated, indicating a new message. It was from Malfoy, who, unsurprisingly, had also received an outstanding in charms. However, his history of magic grade was a poor, and his potions and transfiguration grades were merely acceptable and exceeds expectations, respectively. Daphne, expressing dissatisfaction with her results, had managed to secure 7 outstandings. Neville, to everyone's surprise, had earned 2 outstandings, one in herbology and another in charms, along with an exceeds expectations in potions. Malfoy, feeling outdone, mockingly questioned why Neville had received 2 outstandings, to which Daphne retorted that Neville's skill in herbology was well recognized by Professor Sprout, unlike some who focused solely on spell work. When Neville inquired about John's grades, Malfoy's incredulous response only fueled the competitive atmosphere. John revealed his 12 outstandings, leaving Malfoy and Neville in a mix of shock and envy. The conversation took a turn when it was revealed that Malfoy was the only member of the Star Club to fail an exam, specifically in history of magic. This revelation brought a sense of schadenfreude to the group, especially when Fleur shared that Harry Potter had failed divination and received a dreadful in history of magic. Malfoy's spirits were momentarily lifted by Harry's misfortune, but confusion set in when he learned that Fleur was staying at the Burrow with the Weasleys. The rapid development of Fleur's relationship with Bill Weasley surprised everyone, prompting a mix of reactions and leaving Daphne's mind reeling. John, contemplating the unexpected turn of events, considered the implications of Fleur's connection to the Weasleys and the broader dynamics within their circle of friends. The discovery of a mole within the Order of the Phoenix, someone entirely unexpected, had necessitated a swift and strategic response. Dumbledore had uncovered that Kreacher, the Black family's house elf, was the traitor. This revelation explained the misleading information Kreacher had fed Harry, leading him to believe Sirius was in danger. Sirius, outraged, had initially wanted to dismiss Kreacher, but was persuaded against it. Given Kreacher's extensive knowledge of the Order and its members, releasing him would only serve to endanger them further. The solution was to bind him with a stringent house elf contract, ensuring his silence and loyalty. However, this development rendered 12 Grimmauld Place, the Order's headquarters, a potential risk. Consequently, the Weasleys were advised to return to the Burrow for their safety. Despite this, the headquarters was not entirely forsaken. Sirius took measures to confine Kreacher and strictly prohibited him from leaving the premises. The house then transitioned into a strategic base, used exclusively for Order activities, with Dumbledore himself overseeing its operations. John, who had been following these developments, mused over the situation. With considerable wealth at his disposal, he had contemplated purchasing the property from Sirius. However, Dumbledore seemed to anticipate such thoughts, understanding the strategic importance of the location in their fight against the Death Eaters and Voldemort. Voldemort, now more isolated than ever, harbored a deep-seated hatred for the Order, and by extension John, who had become his most despised adversary. Yet, Voldemort's hands were tied, unable to directly confront John due to the latter's possession of the Holy Grail, an artifact that Voldemort, with his fear of death, could not ignore. The whereabouts of Grindelwald remained a mystery, with the last reports placing him in Germany. Despite their age, Grindelwald's followers, who were spread across Europe, presented a formidable force, their loyalty rooted in faith rather than fear, a stark contrast to Voldemort's reign of terror. John, recognizing the need to expand his influence beyond national borders, saw the resurgence of the Dark Lord as an opportunity. By highlighting the threat posed by Voldemort, he aimed to facilitate the acceptance of his products across different countries, leveraging the crisis to break down international barriers. Back at his office, John was greeted by Jin, who had resumed his role as assistant. Jin informed him of several foreign ministries of magic seeking collaboration, expressing dissatisfaction with the monopolization of the Zero series. Among the dissenters was Director Burns, who advocated for a response to the monopoly, and believing that the control exerted by Silverhand should be curtailed. John, upon reviewing a letter from the American Ministry of Magic, recognized Amelia Bones as a formidable figure. Despite her strong character, she had been unable to see through certain machinations, which had cost her the election for Minister of Magic. Her defeat, influenced by Silverhand's involvement, had not gone unnoticed, and she harbored intentions to implement an anti-monopoly mechanism to diminish Silverhand's influence, a move that John knew would face resistance. Being influenced by others was not something Amelia had planned for. Her strategy was sound, yet she overlooked a crucial detail. Barty Crouch Sr. might eventually betray her, but certainly not at the present moment. The Ministry of Magic's reliance on the financial and military support from the Silver Hand meant that any policy shift would equate to opposing them. Such a move would cause the newly reformed ministry, under Barty's leadership, to collapse spectacularly, a scenario he was determined to avoid. He would steadfastly uphold the interests of the Silver Hand until the ministry could stand independently in terms of funding. Thus, John was not overly concerned. His current focus was on a letter he had received from the American Ministry of Magic. Reflecting on the matter, John mentioned to Jin, "I believe our product could really benefit from a prominent endorser." Jin, having read the letter as well, proposed, "The sales of Lockhart's shampoo saw a significant increase last time. He's always eager for the spotlight." Gilderoy Lockhart, a celebrity within the wizarding world, was known for his readiness to seize any opportunity for fame. His endorsement could indeed be the key to their success. Chapter 418, Lockhart's New Endorsement. America is often touted as the most peaceful and friendly place in the world, where even the Muggles are known for their amiable nature. Among them are talented hip-hop artists who, embracing the culture of freedom, aren't shy about their unique fashion statements. This sense of liberty, however, doesn't fully extend to the American wizarding world, which, despite its freedoms, is not without its dangers. The dark shadow of Grindelwald's era had once loomed over America, too. With rumors of Grindelwald's return, the demand for protective magical equipment surged, notably benefiting the sales at Johnny Silverhand's store, albeit under a guise. The Ministry of Magic's Aurors, seeking to bolster their defenses, proposed a partnership with the American branch managed by the enigmatic Ms. Snake. Despite their efforts, the elusive 13th District remained out of their grasp, impervious even to force. Left with no other choice, the ministry opted for a different tactic, which John, the proprietor, accepted with open arms, offering discounts to his new clients under one condition: the legalization of Johnny Silverhand's equipment in the American market. The U.S. Minister of Magic was initially hesitant, but a persuasive golden Garen appearing in a senior official's home overnight swayed the ministry's opinion. Convinced that legalizing magical equipment could offer additional security in uncertain times, the proposal was swiftly approved. Consequently, Johnny Silverhand's branch transitioned from an underground operation to a legitimate business, albeit with a significant markup on their products. This markup allowed the ministry to purchase in bulk and turn a profit by reselling the equipment on the black market. It was into this complex world that Gilderoy Lockhart stepped, drawn by the allure of a new endorsement deal with Johnny Silverhands. Lockhart, a wizard of considerable fame and a penchant for self-promotion, was intrigued by the offer. However, he harbored reservations about how endorsing magical equipment might impact his cultivated image of a powerful wizard. "Consider the opportunity, Gilderoy," John coaxed, his voice a blend of encouragement and temptation, as they stood overlooking the bustling Nocturne Alley. "Imagine your portrait, not just here, but across the United States, celebrated outside the Ministry of Magic." Lockhart's hesitation began to wane at the mention of a solid gold statue, similar to one previously erected in his honor. John painted a vivid picture of Lockhart's potential fame in America, promising him a place among the most revered figures in the wizarding world. Caught up in the vision of his own grandeur, Lockhart found himself agreeing. "Yes, that would be wonderful," he mused, already picturing himself as a celebrated figure in the American wizarding community. "Powerful wizards need allies, Gilderoy, much like Dumbledore and his Order of the Phoenix," John continued, skillfully playing to Lockhart's ego. "Your ally will be Johnny Silverhand, clearing the path ahead for you." Overwhelmed by the promise of even greater fame and influence, Lockhart capitulated. "All right, I admit it, I can't resist your offer," he conceded, a mix of resignation and excitement in his voice. John, sensing victory, proposed a final touch. "We'll arrange for an image studio to craft a new persona for you. In these dark times, the magical world needs a beacon of hope like you, Gilderoy." Thus, Lockhart embarked on a new chapter, one that promised to elevate his fame to unprecedented heights, all the while under the guiding hand of Johnny Silverhand. Gilderoy Lockhart, ever the opportunist, saw the fight against the Dark Lord not just as a battle for the wizarding world's soul, but as a chance to elevate his own status and sense of purpose. Unlike most, Lockhart was unburdened by fear, save for the concern that his charm might one day fail to captivate his audience, or that his legion of fans might dwindle. During his school years, a time when Voldemort's infamy was at its peak, Lockhart audaciously emulated the Dark Lord by casting an oversized projection of his own head into the sky, much like the sinister Dark Mark. Such brazenness could be likened to the courage of a Gryffindor, yet Lockhart's intelligence lay in his unwavering trust in John's decisions. King watched in bewilderment as Lockhart practiced his speech repeatedly, his robes billowing dramatically with each grand gesture, a stark contrast to the more subdued Johnny the Silver Hand. "You convinced the Dark Lord with such theatrics?" King asked incredulously. John simply shrugged. "In the pursuit of fame and fortune, there's always something that drives a person. Indeed, the allure of fame, the promise of leaving a legacy, and the noble pursuit of power were desires that many harbored." Lockhart, ever the pragmatist, saw an opportunity not just to enhance his own reputation, but to contribute to the greater good. In preparation for his campaign, Lockhart worked overnight with his image management team to overhaul his appearance. Shedding his previously ornate attire, he adopted a new look featuring a red cloak and a battle-worn wand, embodying the image of a knight in the Resistance. This transformation also introduced elements inspired by Xi, including a series of Silverhand Johnny props, such as a wooden dog that never shed, a wizard chess piece designed to protect the homeland, and even a wooden shield meant to ward off malevolent forces. These new products, tied to his serial works, quickly sold out. A week later, John observed the Silverhand Johnny Alchemy Workshop rushing to meet the demand for Lockhart's merchandise. Lockhart himself became a fixture at various events, his speeches inspiring those far and wide. The Daily Prophet's headlines were dominated by Lockhart, proclaiming, "Writing for the rise of the wizard, Gilderoy Lockhart's new chapter hits new highs." Harry Potter couldn't hide his bemusement when he saw Mrs. Weasley proudly purchasing a carved wooden husky, reminiscent of the one that had bitten Dumbledore at the Dursleys. Mr. Weasley, on the other hand, lamented the expense, revealing it had cost him half a month's salary. Ron, shocked by the price, could only exclaim, "Why is this so expensive?" To which Mrs. Weasley, a devout Lockhart enthusiast, replied, "This is a rare Lockhart signature piece." Ron's skepticism about the value of Lockhart's handshake was met with an unexpected revelation from Bill, who informed them that Lockhart had indeed crafted a glove of pure gold. The concept was so foreign to Ron, a testament to the Weasleys' modest means, that he struggled to grasp its significance. The mention of Fleur Delacour brought a scowl to Ginny's face, her disdain for Fleur barely concealed. Despite Bill's admonishment, Ginny's feelings were hard to hide, especially given their past friction and the competitive tension between them. This rivalry, however, was overshadowed by the larger concerns of the wizarding world, including the actions of the Order of the Phoenix and the Society of Stars, hinting at the complex web of alliances and enmities that defined their lives. Dumbledore expressed no reservations about Bill and Fleur's relationship. In fact, he greeted Fleur with a warm smile. However, Fleur's reaction was quite the opposite. Her smile faded upon laying eyes on Dumbledore. Mrs. Weasley harbored concerns that Fleur might disrupt the family's unity, while Mr. Weasley remained silent, his understanding of the situation deeper. He recognized that Dumbledore's endorsement of Bill and Fleur's union could signify an attempt to foster better relations within the magical community. As an adept in alchemy, Mr. Weasley was acutely aware of the implications surrounding the ability to rejuvenate people. The revelation of such a secret could potentially ignite a new conflict within the wizarding world and cause an uproar in the non-magical society. The prospect of eternal youth was akin to the mythical Holy Grail, a temptation few could resist. Thus, Mr. Weasley chose to okay the matter, understanding the broader consequences it could entail. The conversation shifted when Harry, looking concerned, mentioned, "Hermione hasn't come down since she received John's reply." His worry was palpable. Ron, unaware of the letter's contents, was equally anxious, especially since Ginny and Hermione shared a room. Ginny, speaking in a hushed tone, revealed, "She hasn't spoken or even looked at the letter since. She just buries her head in her quilt." "What was written in the reply?" Ron asked, his voice low, mirroring Ginny's concern. Ginny shook her head, indicating her ignorance. Hermione had kept the contents of the letter to herself, sharing it with no one. The air was thick with worry and unanswered questions, highlighting the deep bond and concern they all shared for Hermione. Chapter 419, The Silver Hands Banquet. After dinner, Harry and Ron were concerned about Hermione's well-being. Known for her resilience and intellect, it was unlike her to be in such a state of despair. Determined to lift her spirits, they tiptoed to her room, hesitating at the door, unsure who should enter first. Ginny, growing impatient with their indecision, forcefully pushed them inside. The force of her push caused Ron to stumble against the corner of the bed with a loud thud, snapping Hermione out of her daze. Ron quickly got to his feet, while Harry, feeling somewhat awkward, nudged Ron as if to prompt him to say something. Clearing his throat, Harry ventured, "Hermione, are you all right? Has John forgiven you?" He hoped to navigate the conversation delicately, aware of the sensitivity of the topic. At the mention of John, Hermione's eyes welled up with tears, and she turned her head away, visibly upset. Ron, unable to bear seeing her like this and frustrated with Harry's approach, decided to take matters into his own hands. He took the apple pie Ginny had made from her hands, approached Hermione tentatively, and offered it to her with a cautious, "Mom made apple pie, and I brought you some." "Thanks, Ron," Hermione said, managing a weak smile as she accepted the pie. Seizing the moment, Harry moved closer, exchanging a glance with Ron. They both noticed a pocket watch and a piece of parchment on the table. The parchment bore a cryptic message, "I respect your choice. Before the balance tilts, no one will know the weight of the heart and feathers." The meaning of this message, which had left Hermione distraught for a week, eluded both Harry and Ron. The ticking of the delicate silver lily pocket watch filled the quiet room as Hermione listlessly mashed the apple pie with her fork. "John asked me a question in the library," she began, her voice hollow. "He asked what I would do if I ever had to choose between him and Harry." Harry and Ron listened in silence, sensing the gravity of her words. "I panicked," Hermione confessed, recounting the conversation from the previous semester. "I told him there would never be such a choice to make." Her voice, once firm, now trembled with uncertainty and sadness. "I was terrified of losing my best friends," she continued, her voice breaking. "He promised he wouldn't hurt Harry, and he kept that promise. But I failed to trust him when it mattered most, and I hurt him." Tears streamed down her face as she curled up on the bed, overwhelmed by guilt and regret. Harry sat beside her, offering comfort. "Hermione, I thought John was a threat to me. It's not your fault. You were just looking out for me, like how we would do anything for each other. We're best friends. Ron, mentioned in Harry's reassurance, nodded in agreement, though he felt out of his depth in this emotional terrain. No, it's different, Hermione protested through her tears. John was my first friend who never doubted me, never kept secrets from me. She reflected on their friendship, how John had always been open and honest with her, sharing everything from his firebolt to his thoughts without reservation. Feeling as though she had betrayed her first true friend, Hermione lamented, "This might be the last present I'll ever receive from him," as she clutched the silver lily pocket watch. Seeing that Harry and Ron's attempts to console her were only making matters worse, Ginny intervened, suggesting they give Hermione some space. The next day, Hermione emerged from her room with a renewed focus on her studies, her passion for learning ignited anew by the ordeal. Harry and Ron exchanged puzzled glances, their curiosity piqued by Ginny's words. Ginny shrugged. "I suggested she should apologize to him in person, but only after she's achieved the same stature as John." "That's it?" Ron and Harry couldn't hide their disbelief. "Yes, that's it." Ginny paused, reflecting on her actions. She realized she might have been too harsh, but it helped her understand Hermione's feelings better. At the Ministry of Magic, Arthur Weasley lingered outside Percy's office, feigning busyness whenever someone passed by. Deep down, he yearned for a moment with his son, yet each time the office door opened, he pretended to just be passing by. Percy, on the other hand, seemed to ignore his father, engrossed in his work. After Arthur distracted himself for the 5th time by picking at a poor orchid, he finally mustered the courage to speak. "Percy," he called out as Percy was heading to the elevator. Percy paused, glancing sideways at him with papers still in hand. Suppressing the awkwardness he felt, Arthur said firmly, "I want to talk to you." "Joanna, take this document to the Auror office," Percy instructed a young witch, before turning back and leading the way to his office. "Let's talk inside." Once inside, Arthur noticed the office was cluttered with papers and a filing cabinet. Percy closed the door and gestured for Arthur to take a seat, making space with a knock on the table. Arthur's eyes caught sight of an envelope on the desk, its silver hand logo immediately recognizable. "A letter from John Wick?" he inquired. "A party invitation," Percy replied nonchalantly. Arthur took a deep breath, choosing his words carefully. "I've been thinking, and I realize I was wrong in my attitude before. I shouldn't have underestimated you or tried to dictate your decisions." Percy's demeanor, initially stiff, softened. "It's all in the past," he said, showing a rare moment of understanding. "I won't interfere with your decisions anymore. You're mature enough to make your own," Arthur conceded, letting go of past conflicts related to the Order of the Phoenix. He felt a sense of pride, knowing his son had played a part in capturing Death Eaters. With their reconciliation, Arthur felt a weight lift off his shoulders. Leaving Percy's office, Arthur headed towards his own. On the way, he overheard a conversation from the Auror's office about an invitation to the Silver Hand banquet. Lippy, a member of the Auror training class, expressed envy towards Ozzy Hurd, the director of the Auror office, for receiving such an invitation. The banquet, known for its exclusive guest list, fine dining, and influential connections, was a coveted event. Arthur was taken aback by the mention of Johnny Silverhand's influence within the ministry. The realization of the powerful network his son's peers were building was both surprising and concerning. As evening fell, the dignitaries who usually kept to themselves gathered at Silverhand Manor. The event promised to be a night of opulence, networking, and possibly unexpected alliances. The manor was abuzz with the arrival of prominent figures, each having made their mark in the wizarding world. Among them, Ozzy was making his second visit, while Lippy, who had once served as a security guard within these very walls, had donned his finest attire for the occasion, signaling the gravity he attributed to this gathering. John, standing aloof on the second floor, was an enigmatic presence. Hidden behind a silver mask, his expression remained inscrutable. The mask served not just to conceal, but to symbolize the distance he maintained from the attendees below. Upon receiving the report of their arrival from Tong Mi, who promptly excused herself, Jin approached John, seeking confirmation of their strategy. "Are you sure about this?" Jin inquired, his gaze sweeping over the pure-blood families gathered below, noting their allegiance to Voldemort in the past. John's response was light, yet carried a weight of certainty. "They are all wolves," he observed, driven by greed and a thirst for power. "They require a nudge, a reason to band together more cohesively." Jin, reflecting on their past allegiances, added, "These people have also shown favor to Voldemort." John's chuckle broke the brief silence that followed. "Their loyalty was always to profit, never to the man," he remarked. "Now, Voldemort is nothing more than a crippled dog. Whatever he could offer, I can match, and what he couldn't, I shall provide." A spark of determination lit up John's eyes, betraying the only sign of emotion. He held the keys to interests and ambitions that could easily ensnare these greedy wizards, binding them to his cause. The real game, as John saw it, was to discern the wise from the fools, to identify those who could see beyond the immediate allure of power and those who would blindly martyr themselves for it. The night promised to unfold a new chapter in the wizarding world, one where alliances were tested and loyalties were forged or broken. John, from his vantage point, was ready to steer the course of events, fully aware of the stakes involved. Chapter 420, News of the Dark Lord. The dome of Silverhand Manor was adorned with countless bright stars, creating an atmosphere of elegance and mystery. Old Jack entered the grand hall alongside Chudai and Sophie, while a waiter gracefully presented them with a tray of exquisite sea fish sashimi. "That's the werewolf counselor," Lippy whispered to Ozzy, nodding towards a distinguished figure surrounded by others. "And beside him are the directors of the Werewolf Capture Force and the Werewolf Registration Office." Despite the modesty of their positions, these roles are pivotal in the management and control of the werewolf population. Johnny Silverhand, the esteemed host of this gathering, plans to establish the first magic school for werewolves, with Old Jack serving as its inaugural headmaster, Lippy continued, his voice tinged with a hint of envy. As an undercover hero, Lippy was no stranger to the paths of success, yet his years of service had ingrained in him a habit of expressing envy, something Ozzy had grown accustomed to. "Who's that?" Ozzy's attention was drawn to an individual with strikingly pale skin, sensing an aura of significance. The man's appearance was captivating, with pale cheeks, hair that was a blend of black and silver, and a handsome yet somber expression. His dark golden eyes were particularly mesmerizing. Upon hearing Ozzy's inquiry, Lippy glanced over and expressed surprise. "He's here too? That's unexpected." "Stop speaking in riddles," Ozzy said, her curiosity piqued. She had the urge to light a cigarette but refrained. "Do you know him?" she pressed. "Of course, he's a figure of considerable importance," Lippy replied, realizing his initial response was vague. "During my undercover missions, I've encountered his name multiple times among those shrouded in mystery. He belongs to the enigmatic and dark Edgar family, Ludwig Edgar." As the evening progressed, John Silverhand made his entrance, capturing the attention of all present. Descending the staircase, he exuded an air of grace, his emerald ring glinting under the candlelight and his silk robe flowing like a river of stars. "I'm delighted to see many familiar faces here tonight," John began, his voice resonating through the hall. "Though some are absent for various reasons, those who are here are esteemed guests." His words prompted a few guests to shift uncomfortably, their anxiety evident. John, observant as ever, chuckled lightly before addressing the assembly. "In the past month, events have transpired that have shocked us all. The return of those we thought were gone has unsettled many." The mention of these events elicited mixed reactions from the crowd. The Rosier family remained composed, while the Crabbe and Goyle families appeared visibly distressed. "We gather here to reflect on these developments. Let us raise our first glass to our good friend Lucius," John proposed, lifting a crystal glass filled with golden wine. He acknowledged Lucius Malfoy, who was attired in a dark green velvet robe, from across the room. "Without Lucius's bravery and determination, chaos would have ensued on our streets. Let us honor his courage and his stand against disorder." John toasted, prompting the guests to join in a salute to Lucius. Despite his efforts to appear modest, Lucius couldn't hide his pride, nodding and raising his glass in response. "For our second toast," John continued, Let us acknowledge our friends who, despite threats and intimidation, remain steadfast. Courage, as I've always said, is as invaluable as wisdom. To stand against tyranny is to be a true warrior. The assembly raised their glasses once more, this time in honor of those who had endured persecution, such as the Gower and Crab families, whose descendants had been forcibly marked by the Dark Mark, leaving them no choice but to comply. This moment of solidarity served as a reminder of the resilience and unity within the community, even in the face of adversity. In a world where influence is both a shield and a sword, those who wield it often find themselves targets of various threats. Despite the dangers, the allure of a vast network of interests is too compelling to abandon. As the second glass of wine was consumed, some attendees with lesser tolerance for alcohol began to feel its effects. However, the wine was designed to lose its potency quickly, sparing them from further discomfort. Intelligence is a crucial element in ensuring the longevity of a family's legacy and the success of its ventures, John stated, pressing down on the armrest of his chair. I have a particular fondness for intelligent individuals. They possess the clarity to assess the situation accurately and are not easily swayed by fleeting emotions. He continued, their ability to make informed decisions is invaluable. Even when mistakes are made, it's never too late to rectify them. Every wrong choice carries with it the chance for redemption. John's words seemed to strike a chord, as evident from the uneasy glances exchanged among some guests. He lightened the mood with a chuckle, raising his glass in a toast. This drink is in honor of those wise enough to seek redemption, for it takes both courage and wisdom to acknowledge one's mistakes and choose a better path. The third toast marked the official commencement of the banquet. Lippy noticed the eagerness of certain families, previously aligned with the Death Eaters, to seek an audience with Lord Johnny Silverhand. Their desire for forgiveness was palpable. As an old friend of Tang Mi, Lippy could sense Tang Mi's satisfaction with these developments. Meanwhile, John excused himself from the main gathering and approached a solitary figure in another corner of the room. The man, upon noticing John's approach, stood and greeted him with a polite nod. "Mr. Edgar," John greeted with a smile, "I appreciate you making the journey from abroad to be here." Ludwig Edgar, with his scholarly demeanor, bore a resemblance to Altdorf, though his presence was less imposing. His pale complexion, slender frame, and the rimless glasses perched on his nose lent him an air of antiquity. "I'm drawn to your candor and the influence you've amassed," Ludwig remarked, his gaze sweeping across the assembled guests. "To unite such a diverse array of dignitaries from across the globe is no small feat. It's akin to constructing a sanctuary." John's interest piqued at Ludwig's allusion to another matter, prompting him to suggest a more private setting for their discussion. "My study would be an ideal location," John proposed, leading the way. Once secluded in the study, Ludwig's tone shifted. "The information I'm about to share is not meant for Johnny Silverhand." John listened intently, his hands clasped beneath his chin. Ludwig's expression softened, revealing a rare emotional depth. "A father, acting on behalf of his son's friend," he began, his voice tinged with gratitude. "Thank you, John Wick, for all that you've done for my son." John's usual stoicism gave way to a moment of vulnerability. "Mr. Edgar, I regret the circumstances that necessitated my actions." Ludwig firmly interjected, "He saw you as a beacon of hope and thus embraced his fate willingly, just as my brother Altdorf did. Each made their choices freely." With sincerity, Ludwig implored John not to harbor guilt. The conversation then turned to a matter of grave importance. Ludwig produced an aged parchment listing the names of individuals once allied with Grindelwald, Europe's notorious dark wizard. This document, a relic from the study of Ludwig's father, Grindelwald's former deputy, excluded those already deceased or imprisoned, focusing on those still at large. "Grindelwald's influence has spread to Germany, where he's garnered over 20 followers," Ludwig shared, echoing his father's warnings about Grindelwald's dangerous charisma. John accepted the list, recognizing its significance. Ludwig, having traveled specifically to deliver this information, prepared to depart. However, just as he reached the study's door, he paused, indicating there was more to discuss. Turning his face to the side, John addressed his companion. "My friend, I observed Karkaroff outside Durmstrang, fleeing in a state of utter panic. It seems Voldemort may be on his trail. In the dark world they inhabited, traitors to Voldemort were met with severe retribution. Yet, curiously, Karkaroff had not been eliminated. Upon receiving this news, John instructed Ludwig to halt their journey momentarily. "Mr. Edgar, have you ever considered the prospect of managing a school?" John inquired, his deep eyes shimmering with a complex web of strategies and calculations. Durmstrang, once the educational bastion of the infamous Grindelwald, stood among the top-tier magical institutions in Europe. It was a place steeped in history and dark academia, a fitting arena for someone with ambition and vision to make their mark. Perhaps, John mused, the time had come for a new hand to steer the course of Durmstrang's future.